Good evening, and welcome to this meeting of the full council. My name is Councillor Caroline Smith. I'm the Mayor of Wokingham and will chair this meeting. Before we start, I would like to go through a few preliminaries. Please note the meeting is currently being webcast live. A reminder that members do need to stand when speaking to the chamber. And may I remind everyone that I intend to adhere strictly to the timings set out in the Constitution. I would also like to make sure the members are clear for the provisions in the Constitution for raising the point of order of or a personal explanation. I will read out the relevant paragraphs of the Constitution. Point of order 4.2.13.14. A member may raise a point of order at any time. The Mayor, Chairman will hear them immediately. A point of order may only relate to an alleged breach of these council rules of procedure or the law. The member must indicate the rule or law and the way in which he or she considers it has been broken. The ruling of the Mayor, Chairman on the matter will be final. Secondly, personal explanation. 4.213.15. A member may make a personal explanation at any time or may stand to declare an interest. A personal explanation may only relate to some material part of an earlier speech by the member which may appear to be misunderstood in the present debate. The ruling of the Mayor, Chairman will be on the admissibility of the personal explanation that will be final. I would like to reiterate that my ruling on each of these matters will be final. Thank you. Are there any apologies?
There are 3 apologies. Councillor Gregor Murray, Councillor Wayne Smith and Councillor John Halsall.
Thank you. May I sign the minutes of the meeting held on the 22nd December 2022 as a correct record, and please may I have a show of hands that they are agreed. Agreed. Thank you. Declarations of interest. Does anyone wish to declare an interest in any item on the agenda? And can I remind you to specify which agenda item their interest relates to? Thank you. Councillor Stephen Conway.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I declare an interest as a non-executive councillor director of Loddon Homes Limited and Wokingham Borough Council Holdings Limited. And this relates to item 68 in the agenda.
Thank you. Councillor Clive Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I declare an interest as a director of Loddon Homes and of WBC Holdings, and it relates to item 68 on the agenda.
Thank you. Councillor Prue Bray, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I also declare an interest in item 68 as a non-executive director of the holding company, but also chair of Berrybrook Homes. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, sorry, Councillor David Hare.
Sorry, I'm at the side. I declare an interest as a non-executive member of Optalis and also in item 68 of the agenda.
Thank you. Okay, I'm now moving on to my announcement. So, with your indulgence, I would like to start this meeting with a short announcement concerning my chosen charity, the Wokingham Food Bank, which covers the whole borough. Christmas is just around the corner, in case you haven't noticed. And this year, for some of our residents, it will not be all that merry. I would like us all to try and do a small something to help out. Hopefully, everyone should have had a reverse advent calendar at your seats, which I have distributed. Please note that I have printed these at home, not at WBC. This is an initiative with the food bank where, for each day of Advent, we are asking you to put the described item away to create a Christmas donation to the food bank. With the food bank charity, it's not just about the money, although that is welcome too. It needs food donations. So please, everyone, every day in the coming month, put a particular item in a box or a paper bag. I'm sure you've pondered the dates. Yes, conceptually, it is an advent calendar, but we do need the donations so they can be collected and delivered in time for Christmas. So please, can I ask you to start this Christmas activity early? And please, could I ask everyone to fill their calendar in to either drop it off at the food bank at 498 Reading Road, Monday to Friday, or the full next council meeting on the 17th of November, and I will take them to the food bank. There is also special Saturday collection time on the 3rd of December between 10 and 12. In anticipation of your generosity, I would like to thank you all in advance. Thank you. Councillor Steve.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. With your indulgence, I'd like to just say a brief few words, if I may. Many colleagues will know that Simon Price, Assistant Director for Housing, is leaving the council. Simon hates fuss, and he won't thank me for drawing attention to his departure. But I can't let this opportunity pass without thanking him on behalf, I think, of all councillors for his dedicated service to the council over many years, and particularly, of course, to the housing department. Simon has been a key figure in turning round that department, and he can be proud of the strong state in which he leaves it. I'm immensely grateful to Simon for the help he gave me as a councillor before I stood down in 2012 and since I returned in 2019. I'm particularly grateful for his support since May, when I became executive member with a responsibility for affordable and social housing. His knowledge and experience have been invaluable. Simon's passionate commitment to our tenants is, I'm sure, well known across the council, and I'm sure I speak for all councillors when I wish him all the very best for the future. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you. I'm now moving on to public question time. This is 30 minutes. I would like to remind the executive members that responses to questions must be no longer than 2 minutes, and these will be timed. I have a public question, Jeremy Everard, to ask Ian Shenton. Thank you.
Hi. The proposed 3G pitch at Maiden Early School is going to require significant investment from the council, given the engineering work to remove 10-foot slope on the pitch, improvements to drainage to avoid downstream flooding, pitch replacement every 7 years, costing more than £200,000, plus potentially unbudgeted noise reduction fences. How much will the council spend on internal staffing and external fees to confirm whether the business case is still viable at the stated cost of £800,000 as per the published minutes of the July meeting of the executive?
Firstly, drainage. It has been included within the planning to utilise a Thames water service outlet in the northeast corner of the potential pitch. If the proposal were to progress beyond the current feasibility stage, a full drainage survey will be carried out as part of the design work prior to any planning application being made. Secondly, the Football Foundation stipulate that an applicant will put in place a sinking fund, and that fund would be the replacement of the 3G pitch at the end of its life. Wokingham Borough Council will set aside £25,000 per annum into the sinking fund, and through efficient usage management, appropriate maintenance, and the pitch should then give a good level of service for up to at least 8 or 10 years. The internal staff resources so far have been utilised through day-to-day staff budget. The external technical consultants have been included within the Football Foundation framework. However, given the inflation-driven pressure that is now impacting the council's financial situation, The continued viability of the business case will be closely scrutinised before any decision to progress further.
Yes, the £25,000. I'm not sure whether that's actually in the business case that was put forward. Was that an omission?
It is in the business case, but it will, as I said, the business case will be very closely scrutinised. Situation has changed since that business case was put together, and we're well aware of that.
Thank you. Judith Clark, do you have a question for Ian Shenton, the executive member? Thank you.
Thank you. I live in Sevenoaks Road. Already at the school drop-off and pick-up times, in addition to the sometimes dangerous behaviour with moving traffic, with vehicles driving on pavements if there is a delay, I have to close my windows to shut out the fumes and noise from cars parked outside my house after drop-off or before pick-up, with engines running as drivers look at messages, listen to loud music, or converse by phones with a loudspeaker on. If the 3G plans go ahead, particularly when there are matches and visiting teams, there'll be traffic congestion outside school hours, and I shall have to continue closing windows through the evening until after 10 p.m. and at weekends too. Slamming of car doors will continue after 10 p.m. if players pick up refreshments at the shops outside the school and continue conversations or arguments on the road. The school has no power to control users' behaviour once they leave school premises, and the council already does not keep daytime traffic in check. So how can it ensure that residents do not suffer further stress, noise and air pollution in the evenings and at weekends too?
Yes, thank you. Parking management plan will be set up between the Borough Council, Maiden Early School and the two key partner clubs to ensure that parking and traffic flow will have minimal impact on the local environment. A noise management plan will also be put in place and shared with the key partner clubs to set out robust policies and procedures to help monitor noise level and reduce its impact. The Council within the steering group framework will encourage active and cleaner travel for members of the key partner clubs through walking, cycling and car and lift share, particularly for sessions on weekdays. The key partner clubs will design a briefing for visiting teams to ensure that they follow guidance on parking and noise. Separately, a service level agreement will be signed by the school and key partner clubs to emphasise respecting the local neighbourhood by keeping noise to a minimum, with a focus on noise levels after 8 p.m. on weekdays. This will give guidance on housekeeping and usage to avoid car park conversations and music from cars entering and leaving the site. And Saturday and Sunday morning usage by younger teams will also need to follow the noise management plan and guidance.
I have a supplementary question. Sorry, I should have switched that off before. How can you ensure, or at least how can this plan ensure what happens outside the school premises? The school can manage what is on the premises. How can the traffic on the roads be ensured too?
The normal controls that the council applies on parking and antisocial behaviour can be applied in this situation too.
Thank you. Karen Brown to ask a question of Councillor Ian Shenton, please.
How do you propose to ensure that the mental health of the local residents is not affected by excessive noise from users of the facility? Cars with banging doors and excess fumes, 4.5 metre oppressive acoustic fences, flood lighting till 10 p.m. weekday nights, all day and evening till 8 p.m. at the weekends. There is no respite from a 7-day and night a week facility. An area that is overall very tranquil and undisturbed will be turned into an area of noise and traffic chaos, whereas the care and consideration to the families with young children, the elderly and the myriad of health issues with which people may be struggling with.
In my answer to the previous question, I did highlight the parking management plan, the noise management plan, and the service level agreement. And those serve as examples of how the council would seek to minimise the impact on residents. I would, however, point out that this project was initiated by the previous administration, and much of the background work had taken place before the change of control. When taking over, I was briefed during the summer that all aspects of the project had been considered, and so I took it forward to the executive in July in good faith. However, the consultation has raised clearly legitimate questions, and before we make any decision to proceed to the next step, we will certainly and carefully review all such issues.
Do you have supplementary?
Oh dear. Is it right in a cash-strapped environment to pour valuable council taxes into a project that could turn into a white elephant? If there are complaints from local residents to environmental health officers, there are already 4 sites across the country in school settings that have had after-school games stopped due to complaints from residents about noise and lighting. At the moment, with no suitable solution.
I'm not sure that relates to the previous question, as supplementaries should, but whether it's actually a white elephant is something that we have yet to determine, in the sense that the business case will be very closely re-examined. We have a demand for more capacity in the borough. We have a lot of teams actually having to practice outside the borough. However, that may or may not be the right place for a facility.
Thank you. I have Sandra Spencer asking a question on behalf of David Walker of Councillor Clive Jones.
Thank you. Yes. If the proposed scheme for a 3G pitch at Maiden Early School passes the scrutiny of the council and then it passes to a planning application, it is crucial that house owners living in Avalon Road and Sevenoaks Road know beforehand the exact distances of the pitch, fencing and lighting from their properties. My question, therefore, is what are these distances?
Madam Mayor, this question will be asked by Councillor Shenton. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yes, as we are currently at the feasibility stage of this project, planning so far, whilst comprehensive, it's been an inexact survey. Should a decision be made to proceed to a full planning application, drawings and plans will be produced that show the exact distances of the pitch, the fencing and lighting from the rear gardens of both Avalon Road and Sevenoaks Road. In addition, the Football Foundation technical team would complete an on-site technical assessment to make recommendations to help minimise the impact of pitch, lights and fencing.
Do you have a supplementary? Probably right. Okay. Yeah, sorry. Thank you. Sandra Spencer, would you like to ask your question of Councillor Ian Shenton, please?
Thank you. Maiden Early School has a nature area known as Buckhurst Copse at the edge of the playing field, which is a remnant of ancient woodlands. This provides a habitat for a large variety of wildlife, including bats, many species of birds, moths and foxes, which come into our adjacent garden. Moth traps have revealed the copse supports significantly more moths than surrounding roads. The playing field is home to millions of insects and invertebrates and therefore an essential feeding ground for the wildlife, in addition to absorbing carbon dioxide. What assessment have you carried out on the effect of ripping up the school field and replacing it with plastic, erecting a very tall fence that will hinder or prevent migration, non-stop noise 7 days a week, and floodlighting the entire area every evening, which will seriously affect the bat and moth population?
I express my disappointment that an ecology survey hasn't yet been carried out. It should have been, but it will be carried out before any full planning application is made. I would say, in defence of the council, we've only had one ecology officer until recently, and the survey would be redundant in the event of not proceeding to planning. The council has no desire to impact wildlife in the area. However, it's important to note the existing floodlit Astro pitch, which we're proposing to replace, has been in use for more than 15 years and is already situated next to Buckhurst Copse.
Yes, the floodlit pitch is behind our garden behind the copse. In fact, we never even knew that that pitch was going to be built, and we didn't know the floodlights were going to be built. But it just suddenly happened. But I have noticed, and my husband's noticed, it's got significantly more busy, and it's used a lot more than it used to be. And it is an increasing problem already, and we don't feel this school ever really consulted the residents over it. And I'm not aware that they even had planning approved for use outside school hours of that, and they're certainly using outside school hours. We have a summer house at the bottom of our garden, which we can't use in the evenings now because it's too noisy with constant shouting of footballers. And quite frankly, I'm here mainly in support of my neighbours because we're already affected by this, it is true. Our neighbours don't know what's about to hit them. And what's more, their gardens are going to be much nearer the pitch, which is going to be used infinitely more than it's already being used. So my question to you is, do you care about the environment and the wildlife, and is this really progress?
But a very simple answer, yes. Absolutely. And it will be one of the factors that we look at very closely in the next few weeks.
Thank you. I've got Andy Bailey, is he on Teams, asking a question of Councillor Lindsay Ferris. Andy Bailey? He's on, you're on mute. Oh, you're on mute? Okay. Ask the written question.
Shall I take it as he's read his question, or shall I read it out?
Yes, please, read it out, Councillor Ferris.
If you could hear, I shall read your question. Berkeley Homes produced a map showing 90% of the new housing development taking place in the south of the borough and only 3% taking place in the north. Can the executive explain how they plan to address this imbalance in the next iteration of the local planning update? So my answer is the strategy established by the adopted core strategy local plan was to meet the majority of our development needs in 4 major development areas: North Wokingham, South Wokingham, Arborfield Garrison, and south of the M4 in Shinfield. This approach has enabled significant infrastructure to be provided alongside new homes, helping to mitigate the impacts by providing an opportunity to access local services and facilities, thereby encouraging active travel and reducing the need to travel by car and main journeys. The approach has also enabled us to have the opportunity to retain the character of our towns and villages through actions such as retention of gardens. Our new local plan must be prepared within the context of national planning policy. And of course, much of the land in the north of the borough forms part of the metropolitan green belt surrounding London. National planning policy states that the fundamental aim of green belt policy is to prevent urban sprawl by keeping land permanently open, the essential characteristics of green belts being their openness and permanence. It is therefore no surprise that less development has taken place in the north of the borough. National planning policy does allow boundaries of green belt to be amended. However, this can only be done in exceptional circumstances. Before concluding that exceptional circumstances exist, a local authority must be able to demonstrate that it has examined all other reasonable options. At the time of the core strategy was prepared, the council concluded there were no exceptional circumstances, with development elsewhere being capable of meeting development needs in a sustainable way. Whilst I must keep an open mind given the ongoing work on the new local plan, the council will be required, as before, to consider all other reasonable options outside the green belt. The council's most recent consultation on the local plan included a number of proposals in the north.
You're out of time. Can I then suggest, if you've got a supplementary question, can you put it in by email to Councillor Ferris if you're happy with that? Okay, thank you. Can I ask Mark Bates to ask a question of Councillor Ian Shenton? You're online. He's not attending, so he gets a written answer. Amanda Bates? Okay, sorry, not attending either, so that'll be a written answer. Yeah, okay.
Not procedure.
Okay, that's not procedure. They're in the agenda, so people can actually read them. So we'll give a written answer. Thank you very much, and thank you for attending. Thank you. Item 61, do we have any petitions? Thank you. Would you like to present your petition?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm presenting a petition to stop the parking charges that are scheduled to be implemented on January the 1st. This has been signed by a staggering 4,238 people, which is a massive response in just 3 weeks. At the same time, there are literally hundreds of comments on social media pointing out the negative impact of such an action. Many of them have indicated they will no longer be using WBC car parks when shopping or visiting a restaurant. Instead, they'll go to the many shopping areas of large retail units because their parking is free. I would like to sincerely thank the dozens of retail outlets who actively participated in the collection of these signatures. Unlike this coalition, they recognise the drastic impact on their businesses that these extortionate increases in car park charges will have. Many of them will simply not be able to survive with the reduction in footfall from residents boycotting WBC car parks because they are too expensive. This is especially so when you think of the hospitality sector, where for the first time, evening charges are being imposed. Nighttime economies will be severely hit as patrons take their business elsewhere to establishments with their own free car park. The coalition has mentioned several times that the last time charges went up was in 2018, and the increase was only 10p on the 1 hour slot. This process started in 2016 and included a huge consultation with 341 responses. It also included a 1-year trial period to see what the financial impact was before making a decision. Extensive financial data was provided throughout the process. Now, this is how you consult on something that will have an impact on residents and businesses. So what did the coalition do with their proposals? Consult no one, residents or businesses, provide no business case. They simply voted to impose them. Now, in 2016, the Liberal Democrat opposition did not like how the previous administration managed the process using a call-in, which was reviewed by the Overview and Scrutiny Management Committee. I would like to give my personal thanks to Councillors Bray, Ferris, Rowland and Rochelle Shepherd-Dubay, the signatories on that call-in, as you provided a very good template that we have used to call in your decision on these charges. As you did not carry out any consultation on your proposals, you know what? We thought we'd do it for you. In under 3 weeks, we collected 4,238 signatures, all opposing your increases. You keep on saying you're going to listen to residents. Well, let residents know that your commitment to listening is real and not just simply words. Thank you.
Would you like to hand it in to Priya, please? And we'll debate it at the next full council. Thank you. Mr. Bailey, please could you turn your camera off, please? Thank you. Thank you. Moving on to item 62, which is the Tenant Charter Update 2022. I'd like to welcome Steve Bowers, Chairperson of the Tenant and Landlord Improvement Panel. There'll be a short video and followed by a few words from Steve. Thank you very much.
Okay. Muted my mic. For it to be louder than it. The microphone, yeah.
Slight technical hitch.
Hi.
Try and see if we can.
We're just getting a building support officer to sort this out.
Sorry, are you sharing to the Teams? Because if you're not, it'll play through your laptop, not through the screens. You need to share your screen to the Teams to make the audio work. There's the button marked share.
Can I make a suggestion? Can you send it to David Clifton, who I know is on the call, and he can play it through the screen? Ah.
in favour of communities and neighbourhoods. Stigma to be addressed in commercial and employment contracts. Engagement with tenants over the future housing schemes. Investment in activities that celebrate the local communities.
Hi, my name's Steve Bowers. I'm the chair of the Tenant and Landlord Improvement Panel. I've been doing this work for about 9 years now. This is our Tenants Charter. Tenants Charter was set up a few years ago, 3 years ago. This is the review of the Charter. I became a social tenant in 1984 when I was working. My family moved into Gorsride. I was a few years later told that about 1987 that I was going to go blind, and I was out of work by 1990. My son was born in 1990. In 1999 I got divorced. All the way through this, my tenancy was secure, and that my secure home for me meant more than anything. We want you to look at this video and just run through the aspirations with us.
Aspiration 1. Tackling the stigma associated with being a council tenant.
We have identified that there is a stigma of being a social housing tenant. Stigma of living in sheltered housing accommodation. Stigma of living on low income. And the stigma of being a tenant volunteer. We believe that stigma could be tackled through a proactive media campaign, continuing to overhaul language, so abandoning the use of estates, in favour of communities and neighbourhoods. Stigma to be addressed in commercial and employment contracts. Engagement with tenants over the future housing schemes. Investment in activities that celebrate the local communities and enhance volunteer engagement.
The Tenant Charter was created to try and break the stigma that we feel residents, staff and councillors have about being a council housing tenant. We hope by breaking this stigma, residents feel more comfortable approaching council services and getting involved.
Aspiration 2. Communications with tenants and residents across the borough.
We would like all communications with tenants and residents to be clear, understandable, accessible and meaningful. We would like communications to be improved through consultation should be completed where it affects tenants and residents. Become digital by choice by asking tenants and residents how they would like to be engaged with. Broaden the range of communication channels and create service standards to manage expectations. Ensure communications are accessible to all, with additional formats provided. Give tenants and residents more involvement in strategic housing through partnership working, and improve cross-department communication to support tenants and residents. Sharing performance data more widely. Ensure equality and diversity impact assessments are completed for all policies to ensure we are compliant to the Equality Act 2010. Ensure tenants and residents are involved at each stage when creating a new policy.
The tenant volunteers have looked at policies from the PET policy to rent settings, allocation policies, the anti-poverty strategy. They also look at handbook updates and the neighbourhood service standards. This includes working across departments throughout housing, including housing needs, the rental income team, the housing management team, the housing repairs team, the local housing companies, and the council's equality and diversity team.
Aspiration 3. Greater transparency regarding health and safety inspection results.
The Grenfell Tower disaster has led to renewed focus on the health and safety of social housing properties. The tenants welcome the high level of compliance and tests currently in practice, but suggest publishing inspection results and data as part of the digital personalised customer record, publishing fire safety inspection results. We would like the service to review themselves against the Fire Safety Act 2021 and consult on the findings to the relevant tenant volunteer groups. Publishing the performance data widely after scrutiny by the tenant volunteers.
Gas compliance has remained at 100% for 6 years, with the tenant volunteers monitoring this performance data monthly.
Aspiration 4. Modernising tenant engagement techniques to increase active involvement.
We have suggested increase the number of formal and informal tenant volunteers, increase digital engagement opportunities, offer flexible volunteering opportunities and formats to increase accessibility, link with external groups such as the Resident Equalities Forum and local charities, continue supporting local community engagement events, continue to support the tenant involvement groups, providing training and opportunities for tenants to get involved.
We have 20 formal tenant volunteers with 46 informal tenant volunteers signed up. We have over 9,000 plus hours volunteered since the first publishing of the Tenant Charter in 2019. This is an average of over 3,000 plus hours volunteered each year. Aspiration 5. Identifying future patterns of tenant housing need and demand.
We have suggested give tenants greater choice of the type of housing and tenancy terms. Ensure full consultation when planning, building new homes. Tenant volunteers to continue to be consulted on allocations and lettings policies. Ensure new or refurbished homes are designed to be more carbon neutral. Support the council to become carbon neutral by 2030. Aspire to have greater tenant involvement in the design and planning of social housing. Give tenants and residents a greater role in strategic planning.
Gorse Ride's regeneration project that's been going on. I've been involved with it for about 7 years now. I'm the chair of the regeneration steering group, which I do in conjunction with the tenants, officers and the builders. And it's going to be a magnificent new regen area. It's coming on apace. So we've got through hopefully the hard bit, and now it's just a matter of building the houses. So that's what we want, with some brand new social housing. There's going to be 136 social tenants down there, so which will be a great addition to the housing revenue account.
Aspiration 6. Helping tenants manage their personal finances.
We have suggested advising on accessible money management apps, training and upskilling staff on signposting tenants to financial support. Continue to support tenants by signposting them to help. Further advice and signposting to finance and budgeting training courses. Continue providing the texting service to increase accessibility and additional formats for contact regarding rent and arrears.
The tenant volunteers have been heavily involved in consultations and getting text reminders set up in regards to rent. They've also had demonstrations on reporting apps with some of the contractors.
Aspiration 7. Creating an easy, friction-free customer experience for tenants.
We have suggested recruiting staff who are helpful, knowledgeable and committed to customer service, creating a single point of contact for initial inquiries, creating a mandatory standard customer service training programme, reviewing response time targets and ensure that these are met with the tenant volunteers. Greater contact choices for tenants and residents. Review and develop accessible formats to council services, especially those provided digitally. Introducing self-service housing to encourage tenants to manage their own housing accounts online.
The tenant volunteers have been involved in multiple trainings over the last year, including the housing complaints training, the first word training and the housing ombudsman training.
Aspiration 8. Maximising the accessibility of council housing services.
We have looked at changing the use of existing resources and introducing new technology. Changes to the use of existing resources. Free phone for all calls to the council switchboard. Minimising call waiting times for housing services. Review existing and future resources to ensure they are accessible for all. Use of new technology. Introduction of reporting apps. Introduction of a digital inclusion strategy to ensure no tenant is left behind. Increase access to digital engagement to all sheltered housing properties. Consult with tenants and residents on their preferred forms of contact and provide multiple options.
The tenant volunteers are involved in multiple events each year. This includes attending training, monthly meetings, and the neighbourhoods group who organise community events. There have been overall 211 events held in the last year.
Aspiration 9. Giving tenants greater choice on who does repairs and when.
We suggest continue to have tenant volunteers involved in the contract selection process, enabling tenants to confirm and cancel repairs visits directly with the contractor, enabling tenants to be offered a range of hourly time-banded appointment options with contractors, introducing an accredited handyman service for non-qualifying work. We would also like Woking Borough Council to investigate the benefits of having a mixture of maintenance contractors.
The tenant volunteers are involved in all housing staff recruitment and interviews. They also sit on contract meetings when deciding new contractors who will be working with the council or on behalf of the council.
Aspiration 10, developing a protocol for the analysis and protection of tenant data.
This aspiration ensures compliance with the General Data Protection Regulations, GDPR, and Information Commissioner, ICO, guidance. Ensure that all use of tenant data is GDPR and ICO compliant. Using data analytics to predict future housing service need and demand. Develop a housing-led protocol for the use and protection of tenant data in line with the ICO. Involve tenants in the development of data protection impact assessments. Enabling tenants to be involved in process of data collection, analysis and findings.
So, how can we achieve these aspirations?
We need help. Help from the councillors, help from tenants, help from residents and help from council staff. It's about getting everyone involved and everyone working together as one coherent team, which the Tenant Charter has already shown it can do in what we have achieved in the last 3 years.
Thank you for watching the video. Thank you for reading the Charter. And thank you for working with us in partnership with the Tenant and Landlord Improvement Panel.
Well, what did you think? Good, yeah? Thank you. We can do what we do without you guys. You help us all the way along the line. The staff do. We work in conjunction with you guys right the way across the board. So we want to just continue that on for the next 3 years, hopefully, and see what we can achieve by all working together. So what questions have you got for me? Any? No.
Councillor Frome, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I had the privilege of sitting on this tenants panel for a while. I'd just like to thank both Steve and Simon for actually providing us with an exemplar of how we can work with residents, involve residents in our service design and our service delivery, because to me, this is something we should be doing on more of our services. I'd like to thank them both and wish you the best for this new one.
Thank you, Jim. The other question, please. No? Yes, please.
Councillor Conway.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wanted to, first of all, say that was a quite brilliant and inspiring video, Steve. Thank you very much. I would like, at some point, maybe this is not quite the appropriate moment, to propose that we accept the recommendations in the agenda and thank Steve and all the tenant volunteers for their hard work. I think I'm going to have to do that once all the questions have been fielded, but if I could then propose the acceptance of this.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you. Councillor Pauline Jorgensen, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As a former exec member for housing, amongst quite a few people in here, I'd like to thank Simon Price very much for all his help over the years, and even after I ceased to be exec member for housing, he's been really, really helpful. I'd also like to thank Steve, who's done a brilliant job over Gorse Ride. It's really nice to see it being developed, and I'd like to wish Simon all well for the future. It's a really good presentation. It made me think, actually, most of the issues I get in my post bag are to do with housing not provided by the council, but provided by housing associations. I'm wondering if any of these brilliant ideas could be included as part of the agreements made with housing associations, so that the tenants of those properties get the same service quality as the tenants of Woking and Borough do.
I was invited along to the RP group, which was Shirley. And Shirley invited me along to give them my thoughts on that very subject. I said, all we need them to do is get to Wokingham standards. That's all we need. If we can get to them standards, we're running decent homes at 100%, as it says. We were running a gas servicing. We've been compliant for 6 years at 100%. The rent roll coming down, and it's all working very well at the moment. But if the housing associations could get to our standards, which, as Jim quite rightly said, is exemplar to us, then it will be great for us to do that. But whether they do or not, I'm afraid that's going to be down to you guys. We would like that. You get less mail in your bag, and we would get some happy tenants. So that would be great.
Thank you, Steve. I don't know whether any of the officers could take it away and see if we could include it in our agreements. Just a thought.
Councillor Kaiser, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Steve,
hi, John.
Good evening. Thank you very much for your support. When I first started Gorse Ride, I was told it couldn't be done. It was because of people like you that we achieved it and got it off the ground. So I thank you very much for that. And I would like to second Councillor Conway's approval of this. Simon, I don't know what to say to you really, but I don't know whether the people in this chamber realise just what you've done. You've taken over 100 rough sleepers off the street in the last 2 years and housed them. Very difficult cases. The other issue is that you've also reduced the number of, I remember you telling me, the number of rough sleepers. You said you couldn't get them all off the street because you had one that refused to come in. Thank you, Simon.
Councillor Gary Cowan, please.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to agree with all the points John has made there. And I think perhaps this video should be something that all of the departments of the council should sit down and watch every day. There's an awful lot to be learned in how the relationship can be with councillors, residents and officers. It's a good example. It's an excellent example of how we could all be working together for the better. Simon, I'll be sorry to see you go. We've worked together on and off for some years. We've had our good moments, but I think we've had our bad moments. And I hope we go away on the best of terms, and congratulations and good luck for the future. Thank you.
Councillor Laura Blumenthal, please.
Thank you, Steve and Simon, for the video. And thank you so much for creating such a positive, warm and constructive forum in TLIP. It really is. It's the only 3-hour meeting a month that I look forward to, believe it or not. And it really is exemplary, a template for the council to use for engagement with residents. My question, Steve, is what one thing are you most proud of achieving for tenants through TLIP? I know I've put you on the spot, but I think it's a valuable question to ask.
What one thing? Probably getting TLIP to work well, I think. Again, that's down to you guys. We're non-political, as everybody knows, because I bang on about it enough. And we just all work together for the greater good. That's what I'm most proud of, is getting that to work as well as it does. And that's thanks to assistant directors, councillors, volunteers, the staff, Kim and Ros, and everybody that works alongside with us, because we all work together. We're one big team. That's the way we get things done. We work in partnership. We'll work in partnership with anybody as long as we can get what it takes to work everything out properly. We are involved with the voluntary sector. We're involved with housing associations. We're involved with somebody comes up to me and says, what do we want to be involved with? I just say everything. Get everybody in anywhere we can, because we can help and we can do everything we can do properly, shall we say, in our way, because all our letters go through the communications group, and all we want is plain English. It goes through the group, it comes back out, and it gets sent on. And that's if it goes up to over 10 tenants, it has to go through that group. If we can make that happen through the council, and they can, I'm not suggesting they go for our communications group because they're going to have a fit. But if we can do that to get them to speak plain English, it would cut down so much trouble you guys get, because half of them don't understand what's going on. And it's just working together. It's accessibility for things. You know, I get phone calls from people saying, "Oh, what about this and what about that?" So he said, "I sent you a letter." I said, "Well, it ain't much good to me, is it? Because I can't see it." So what we do is we get a database now, and Simon's instigating it, and Jinder, who's the performance man, he's sorting it out, and he's trying to get in touch with Northgate. And so when it comes up, it flags up that there's a disability. And then we can go, right, actually, that's a good idea. We can do that. But we've done that working together. We can do that right the way through the council if we try hard enough. And as I say, I'm non-political. I just work with anybody. Because you guys, all you guys, I'm quite lucky. I've worked with John, Jim, Prue. Where are you, Prue? You're out there. You're one of the mainstays of it all. You have been. Shirley, Laura, she's been in it. Everybody's been in it, you know. Phil, where's Phil? Phil's out there somewhere. He's part of it, you know. And we're all a part of a team. And we've got to work together. Otherwise, we spend our time scrapping with each other. We ain't going to get nothing. That's what our philosophy. That's what my philosophy's been since I started 9 years ago. I said to Simon, we'll work together. I said to Kim and Hannah, we'll work together. You know, and a lot of this comes down to trust. I said to Shirley, because Shirley's a big part of it as well, as she knows, is Andy Croy. Andy was a part of it as well. And we've all worked together, and we want to just get the best for everybody. But we don't want to put blood on the carpet. That doesn't get anything done. We just want to work with people, you know. When Simon was with us, if there's something went wrong, I would go straight to him. He's taught me to take it head on, and that's what I do. And thanks to him, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. And hopefully it's good enough for you guys. Sorry, I went on a bit there.
Councillor Prue-Bray, please.
No, you weren't going to escape without me. So it would be remiss of me not to say something tonight. I was part of TLIP for a long time. It's the one thing I miss. I'm doing children's services now. I would say I love it. It's hard work, but I do miss having involvement with the tenants. The TLIP meetings, like Laura, were the highlight of my month. Sitting around a table with people, talking together, making the service better with the staff, the tenants, and all the councillors. And apart from the odd bit of argy-bargy between me and David chopping, it's all fine. And it wouldn't have happened without Simon driving it. And I would like to say my personal thanks to Simon, not just for what he did in housing, but the bit of his work that we haven't really talked about, which is refugees, where he has done some terrific work over about 6 years now, first with the Syrian resettlement scheme and more latterly with other groups of refugees, which is really, really appreciated by some of the most vulnerable people in our society. But there haven't been a lot of questions, I've noticed. And Laura managed to ask you a question. I think what we're all saying is please carry on. Please keep this going as it is. It's one of the shining examples in the council of how people can work together to get stuff done. And I hope that it will continue like that for many years to come. And I hope Simon will look in on us occasionally and see that we're carrying it on as he would wish.
So thank you, Prue.
Councillor Andy Croy, please.
Thank you. And nice to see you again, Steve.
Thank you,
nice to see you, Simon. I'm like everybody else gutted that you're leaving. To start with, one of the things that all the members who've said how much they enjoy going to the meetings haven't said is how good the food is. And it's not just the company and the work they do, but it's a great spread, and I'm sure it's a great attraction to everyone who goes. I just wanted to ask you to comment about the role of tenants and the team in terms of making sure that accommodation is up to standard. There was a letter in today's Wokingham paper, and the letter complains that thousands and thousands of pounds have been spent doing up broken down flats. Now, you and I both know that the housing revenue account is protected. It's got nothing to do with council tax, nothing to do with any other of our political squabbles. So I'd just like you to expand, if you could, on what TLIP does in terms of making sure that all accommodation is up to a decent living standard and that money's spent in that way isn't that wasted. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Eddie. As we've seen on the video, we have all sorts of groups, and we have repairs. We have a repairs group that keeps its eye on that as well, and the funding and everything else that goes on there. But anything that comes through us, through TLIP, we scrutinise it to make sure it's doing what it's doing. We want all tenants to be happy and in a nice home. Unfortunately, sometimes there's issues that it's a very difficult, it's a very difficult line for me to cross sometimes when I get involved with the operational stuff. I try not to get too much involved with the operational stuff. I leave that to the likes of Simon and everybody else. But if it comes to me as an issue, then I will raise it with the assistant director and say, look, these people aren't happy. What are we doing about it? And he'll come back with the answers. If he hasn't got the answers, he would come back with them and tell me. As I say, we've got 2,600 homes out there that we're looking after, and we're running at 100% decency. So there is going to be issues, Andy. We will tackle them as and when they come down the line, and we will try and do the best we can for our tenants. That's what we're here for.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pauline Hellier-Simon, please.
Thank you. I believe that I was the executive member for adult social care and housing when this charter was put together. And I well remember the meetings that we had with tenants and the huge contribution that so many of them were making into putting the right words into the charter, and particularly you, Steve. What I hadn't realised was that it was so long ago. And it's well time that it was updated. But I've probably got more memories than most of you of how all of this came into being. And I certainly remember the huge amount of effort that the tenants made to make sure it worked and that it worked well. And I was staggered to hear the number of hours that the volunteers are still putting in and have done over so very many years. And it's evolved and gone on. And I think it has caused a much greater experience for our tenants than before we had the charter, because it has given them a voice. And I hope that you all feel, you and your the people you represent, Steve, I hope you feel that the council has listened and has reacted to the things that you've said. I particularly would like to thank you, Steve, because you have been involved, you and your dogs have been involved for so many years. And in my mind, you have been one of the main driving forces behind the initiation of the charter and its evolution and its development to this stage in a sort of new era. And I fully support the recommendation that we have a look at this every year and make sure that it's constantly current. So thank you, Steve, and all of your volunteers for all that you've done. And you have just stuck at it for so many years, and it's well appreciated, I assure you. Thank you.
Thank you, Pauline. I couldn't do what I do without the people that are surround me. I've got the tenants that support me right the way through, all the 20 of them and plus, and I've got a team which are sitting somewhere. I can imagine Kim crying about now. She gets quite emotional about all this sort of stuff. We've got Roz up there and we've got Hannah up there. I've got my partner up there. I've got Annette up there. We just moved in. We're very lucky. We just moved into a brand new house in Owlet Avenue, one of the Loddon Homes. It's lovely, absolutely amazing. I just wanted to tell you guys that Annette and myself, we've got 5 children, and they range right the way across. My eldest daughter is 2 years away from being an accountant. Second daughter works for an international beauty company. She's head of training. My next daughter, Emma, she works for out of hours social care. She takes on a lot of burden. that girl. My other son, Scott, he's got a degree in architecture. My son, Sean, who was mentioned in the video, he now lives in London and runs his own business as a PT. They all grew up on Gorside Council Estate. So if anybody tells you people don't come to anything, tell them they're talking out the back of their heads. We've got 5 children between us, and they've all gone on to do something, and they all were brought up on Gorside. And Councillor, yes, absolutely. So please just bear that in mind, that every time you see some waif and stray that say they brought up on Gorside, not all of them are like that. There's a very, very few that come along that make it rough for everybody. But we are very proud of our children, and they were brought up in Gorside in a council house. So, and that's why the security is there for these council tenants. That's because you guys make it so. You sit here every Thursday on every once a month, and you go through all this stuff, and you stick your head above the parapet, and everybody's there to throw brickbats at you because that's the easy thing to do. But as I say to them, when somebody comes up to me and says to me, "Oh, what are you doing?" I say, "Well, come and join us then. Come and be an involved tenant." And they go, "Oh no, I don't want to do that." Well, shut up then and just don't bother. Because if you don't want to join us, you can't shout about it. And the same as you guys. They don't want to come and talk to you or be with you, then that. So well done to you guys. That's all I say.
Thank you very much. That's brilliant. Thank you very much for your Thank you very much for your time. Now I'll ask for a proposer on the recommendation. That's Councillor Conway. Do you have a seconder? John Kaiser. Thank you.
I think it's Shirley.
Shirley, sorry. I just thought second of Shirley. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Steve, for a really excellent video. I found that brilliant in every way and also very inspiring. I felt quite moved as I heard it. I propose, Madam Mayor, that we accept the recommendations in the agenda, and we thank Steve and the tenant volunteers for all their hard work. Steve, I will work with officers to see how we can meet the aspirations in this report. But I want to say something now, which to me is very important, and that's that my ambition is the same as yours. I too want us to have fully integrated communities where no one feels excluded or stigmatized, where no one is judged by the housing they live in or the level of their income, but simply by their character and personal qualities as a human being.
Agreed.
That's my aspiration, and I know it's yours.
Absolutely. Thank you.
To me, working with Steve and the tenant volunteers on TLIP has been one of the most enjoyable parts of being an executive member. Lots of people have spoken about the joys of TLIP. I have to say to Andy, you wouldn't enjoy it so much now, Andy. It's all online and there are no luxurious spreads. So you lived in the golden age, and I've got just the online version of TLIP. But it's still great fun, and it's, as I say, been one of the most enjoyable parts of being an executive member. And I look forward to that relationship continuing to be productive for all concerned. And I think I'm echoing a sentiment already expressed by many councillors. It's a great example of partnership working, and I'm very keen to encourage partnership working across the council. So thank you, Steve, and for all who've worked with you for this excellent report.
Thank you, mate. It's appreciated. Sorry, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to say thanks to everybody, the team, the volunteers, TLIP members and past members. But most of all, I want to say thank you to this man on my left. Without him, none of this would happen. There you go. I'll keep it short. Sorry.
Thank you. Does anybody wish to speak against the report? No, we go straight to, if nobody wishes to speak against the report, we go straight to a vote.
Don't I get to
say a few words as seconder.
Sorry, we've also run out of time, so we go straight to a vote. Sorry. Thank you. All those in favour of the report? Anybody against?
I'm not against, Madam Mayor. I'm just signalling I wanted to very quickly say, Shirley planned to say something not simply about this report, but about Simon. And I do think she should be allowed to speak. And if she could speak on Simon, but also mention the report, I think that would satisfy everyone.
Okay, I'm happy to go ahead with that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I'll keep it brief. I am delighted to second the 3 recommendations that are before us. And just to say, this is a living, breathing document which must continue to evolve and keep pace with the aims and aspirations of our tenants. I'd like to thank Steve for bringing the Tenants Charter to the Council. And I'd also like to pay tribute to Simon, who is sadly moving on. Thank you for all the help you've given us as members. Thank you for building particularly such a strong housing team. And most of all, thank you for your absolute dedication to improving the lives of our tenants. I don't want to embarrass you any further, but I think your legacy will live on in this charter. So thank you.
Sorry, to continue, were there any abstainings? Thank you. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 63. Thank you. Item 63, Council submission to the Local Government Boundary Commission for England consultation. Have I a proposer? Councillor Bray. And do we have a seconder? Councillor Conway. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, I'd like to thank the Electoral Review Working Group and the officers, and not least for turning up for a meeting at 7:30 in the morning in order to get this done. The Local Government Boundary Commission for England is looking at our internal ward boundaries in one of their periodic reviews. The aim is at the end of the process, we should have a structure in which, as far as possible, each councillor represents the same number of people, one in which it matches the structure of our communities and which tries not to be administratively complicated. In our case, because we've opted for elections by thirds, they also assume that all wards will be 3-member wards, unless there's a very good reason why not. And they have agreed with us that we should continue to have 54 councillors, which conveniently divides by 3. So the Commission have asked people and organisations in the area to make proposals on wards by the 7th of November. They will then look at those proposals and synthesise them into a scheme which they will publish for consultation on the 7th of February. So the report you have in front of you is what the working group has come up with for this council to submit for the 7th of November deadline. Towns and parishes, individuals and political parties are likely also to make submissions for all or part of the borough. What we have in front of us is this council's view. It is by no means guaranteed that it is what the final scheme will look like, although I think it would be fair to say that it's likely it will carry some weight with the Commission when they look at drawing up the actual scheme. You can read the full report for yourselves, so I'm not going to run through everything in it. The working group was able to get cross-party agreement on quite a lot of the proposed wards. The most significant point of difference was that while the majority of the working group opted for a structure of 18 3-member wards, the Conservative members preferred 16 3-member wards, with the other 6 councillors split into 2 2-member wards and 2 1-member wards. For the areas where we did not achieve agreement, we have put both options in the report, one as the majority view and one as the option supported by the minority, and this will allow the Commission to consider both. And I hope that as we have taken steps to accommodate everyone, everyone will feel able to vote to approve the submission. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody wish to speak against the report? Thank you. Councillor Conway, do you wish to speak now or reserve your right?
I think I'll reserve my right, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Berninger, please.
Nearly got my name right, I'll give you that. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes. I'd like to start off saying wards are better off reflecting the areas they represent. I represent the ward of Sonning, which has a long and rich history. There are several villages in the borough, such as Swallowfield, Hurst and Charville, and each of them is unique. If the rural communities of Sonning, Charville, Walgrave and Remnant are merged together, they will lose their identity and create a massive geographical area with many complex issues. These rural communities on their own add to the diversity of settlements in the borough of Wokingham. Even the report itself states these have distinct, separate identities. These rural communities have very little in common with the urban areas of the borough, where, for example, Earley and Woodley are their own communities with many councillors. In one-member wards, there is a better relationship with residents and a greater understanding and being able to focus on the issues. The single-member wards of Sonning, Charville, Hurst, Swallowfield, Barkham and Arborfield all work. Why is there a need to change and break up a very good system? If something is not broken, there is no need to replace it. This proposal in the report fails to adequately recognise these rural communities and simply would not work. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Munro, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and well said, Michael. I totally agree with you, being a member of one of those single-member wards. I think I'd like to take two additional points to that made by Michael. One is, we know, we don't know how much, but it would be cheaper if we didn't have 3 sets of elections. Why spend the money? And secondly, more importantly, we asked the people what they thought. And they said that they thought they would like us to have all-out elections that would allow us to have the flexibility and save the money. So my question is, why are we doing this?
Councillor Harper, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have to say I'm actually sad that I have to feel the need to oppose this motion, because I think overall the working group worked very well. It was a complex area, lots of figures to go through, and lots of agreement on the majority, and it was definitely chaired by Prue Bray. But I do feel I have to oppose this because, as Prue mentioned in her speech, the ward should match the structure of communities. And in 2 areas, I don't believe this report does that. The areas of Hurst, which is a very rural area, doesn't have much affinity with Twyford, which is being lumped together with, and also Swallowfield, another large rural area, which unfortunately the majority view is lumping it with Spencer's Wood and 3 Mile Cross. I strongly feel that those 2 areas should be the majority view. That's what the council should be putting forward towards the Commission. And that's why, unfortunately, I have to stand and vote against this.
Councillor Gary Cowan, please.
Well, thank you. I would agree with the comments made already. I think the individual wards within this borough have got very clear identities, and what the proposals here completely destroys that. My past experience of the Boundary Commission has left a lot to be desired anyway in the work that they do, and some of the decisions they've taken. The most damning failure in this report, as I see it, is its insistence on creating 3-member wards when historically, although perhaps it's a neat convenience for the borough council and the big political parties, although oddly enough they're not for it, all of them either, so I will withdraw that particular remark. Three-person awards puts up the cost of independent candidates massively, and if introduced, it will discourage independents or residents group standing, which is not really very democratic. I mean, the mother of all parliament sets the scene when every citizen is represented by one MP. So why should local government be different? Why should parishes are unique? So why should we have a situation where a resident in this particular borough is represented by three different people when they're only represented by one MP? It defies logic, and I'll be voting against it. Thank you.
Councillor Jim Prome, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll be voting against this recommendation, but I do recognise the amount of work that's gone into it by officers and members. Shinfield is an ex-rural area, is slightly confused within this set of proposals, to say the least. And it's about what residents recognise as a community, not about a numbers game, just trying to balance out the number of residents per each member. Members can represent small numbers of residents or large numbers of residents. It's how they behave. It's not a numbers game. And I'm afraid this report fails to do that. It just counts the numbers. Thank you.
Councillor Andy Croy, please.
Thank you. I wasn't planning to speak. I thought that the output of the group was good enough, but all of the major parties certainly would agree with it. I mean, we're hearing this, people are presenting this notion that if a small village is inside a bigger ward, somehow that village loses its identity. It doesn't. The identity of our villages is not tied up in the borough councillors. No one has ever said to me, oh, I feel like I'm from Arborfield or Barkham because I've got a separate borough councillor. That's not how they think. They look at the village community, and that is different from the borough community. What these single-member wards are is a chance for people to go on holiday for 3 years, and that is why I suspect you've got the representatives of single-member wards standing up for them. What this proposal does is ensure that communities are kept together. They're not divided. In the bigger settlements like Wokingham and Woodley and Earley, you have to have divisions. All of the villages are contained within wards. Prior to this arrangement, the one settlement, small settlement, that wasn't contained within a single ward was the new settlement based around Arborfield Garrison. That was divided between 3 separate wards. That is ridiculous. You can't do that. You had literally the lines running through the middle of the estate. The proposals that the group has come up with fix that problem, and they fix a lot of other issues as well. So we will be voting for it, and we think you should too.
Thank you. Councillor Scott.
I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, I thought there was another speaker. May I, in accordance with 4.2.15.5, call for a recorded vote on this item with the support of 5 of my colleagues? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, noted. Vote 40. Thank you. Councillor Stephen Conway, seconder, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I perhaps should respond to one or two of the comments made earlier by other contributors, perhaps starting with Stuart, who seems to have been trying to get us to look again at the decision that was already made by the council to continue with the system of elections by thirds. I should remind Stuart, perhaps one of the most impressive speeches in the debate on that subject came from one of your colleagues. It was one of the best speeches I've heard in this chamber over many years. So this isn't, or doesn't have to be, unless people want to make it a party political issue. In response to Peter's points, thank you for your generous acknowledgement of Prue's excellent chairing and very fair-minded chairing. I think I'd say, Peter, what to me seems the great virtue of this report is it does represent both the majority and minority views. The views that you and your colleagues put forward have been incorporated in this report. And I think that is the fairest outcome we can expect when there are different views on the council about how to proceed. Nothing is prescribed in this report. Options are presented, your options and ours. I cannot, for the life of me, see why you would vote against the work that you and your colleagues put in to ensure that your voice was properly represented. It seems to me utterly bizarre and only a matter of political point scoring. You should vote against a recommendation, a report that contains your input. I find it very puzzling. And I hope all councillors in the main opposition group will, the only opposition group, will actually reflect on that point and realise you are voting against your own input. I find that truly bizarre.
Thank you. Councillor Bray, would you like a right to reply?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to answer a couple of the points that are made there. As Stephen has said, election by thirds is a settled matter. We cannot reopen it now. And the Commission has made it absolutely clear that it expects us to have 3-member wards. And despite that, we have still included 2 options, one that allows Swallowfield to remain a single-member ward and one that allows Hurst to be a single-member ward. I heard Michael Firmage's plea for Sonning. That was not raised as an issue at all by the Conservatives in the working group, who are happy with the thing that we drew up, which includes it with other villages. I would also point out that Swallowfield itself currently is a ward which incorporates not just Swallowfield, but also Risley and Farley Hill, neither of which have lost their identities as a result of being incorporated in a ward with Swallowfield. I do recognise that some members have particular concerns about their own ward, and no proposal is going to be perfect. And we have done our best to accommodate everyone. And please remember, there will be further opportunities to affect this at later stages. But what a shame that the Conservatives have decided to throw their members on the working group under a bus. In fact, what a shame that one of the members on the working group has thrown himself under the bus. One might even ask oneself what the point is of having a working group if the Conservatives are not going to stick with what they agreed to at the meetings. Now, just for clarity, if the Council does not agree to the recommendation tonight, then no submission will be made in the name of the Council. I will, as the chair of the working group, instead write to the Local Government Boundary Commission, enclosing a copy of the working group's report, which is a publicly available document, having been published with the agenda, and explaining to them what has happened at this meeting. And if there are councillors who are planning to vote against, and I hear what Gary and Jim have said about particular areas, it would be helpful if they could send me an email saying which parts of the report they might feel able to support, so that I could include that in a letter. If they're opposed to the entire thing, they need to say that. But people need to understand that there is an expectation from the Commission of 3-member wards, and they will draw up their own scheme. If we don't submit anything, they will still draw up their own scheme, and we will have to see what they come up with on the 7th of February. But, I find it extraordinary. We should have a working group. The members of the working group agreed to a report, and we have accommodated the 2 things that the Conservatives asked for specifically, and yet they're still going to vote against it. That doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever.
Thank you. Please, can you say for, against, or abstain? Councillor Akhtar.
Abstain.
Councillor Baker.
Abstain.
Councillor Barr.
Abstain.
Councillor Rachel Bishop-Firth.
For.
Councillor Blumenthal.
Abstain.
Councillor Bowering.
Abstain.
Councillor Boyd.
For.
Councillor Bray.
For.
Councillor Burgess.
For.
Councillor Chadwick.
Abstain.
Councillor Conway. Councillor Cornish.
For.
Councillor Cowan.
Against.
Councillor Croy. Councillor Cunnington.
Abstain.
Councillor Davis.
Abstain.
Councillor Dennis.
For.
Councillor Ferris.
For.
Councillor Firmager.
Abstain.
Councillor Fishwick.
For.
Councillor Fruin.
Against.
Councillor G.
For.
Councillor Hare.
For.
Councillor Harper.
Abstain.
Councillor Pauline Hallier-Simons.
Abstain.
Councillor Howe.
Abstain.
Councillor Johnson.
For.
Councillor Jones.
For.
Councillor Norman Jorgensen.
Abstain.
Councillor Pauline Jorgensen.
Abstain.
Councillor Kaiser.
Abstain.
Councillor Kerr.
For.
Councillor Loyes.
Abstain.
Councillor Maher.
For.
Councillor Malvern.
For.
Councillor McGatts. Charles McGatts.
Abstain.
Councillor Rebecca McGatts.
Abstain.
Councillor Mather.
For.
Councillor Mickleby.
For.
Councillor Monroe.
Abstain.
Councillor Neal.
For.
Councillor Rance.
Abstain.
Councillor Rowland.
For.
Councillor Shenton.
For.
Councillor Imogen Shepherd-Debay.
For.
Councillor Rochelle Shepherd-Debay.
For.
Councillor Caroline Smith. Councillor Mike Smith.
For.
Councillor Bill Soane.
Abstain.
Councillor Swaddle.
Abstain.
Councillor Eunice.
Abstain.
Thank you. The recommendation's carried.
Thank you. Moving on to item 64, changes to the Constitution. Before I invite Clive to move this report, please note that in addition to supplementary papers circulated for this item, revised recommendations have been circulated and members should have a copy of these in front of them. Can I invite Councillor Clive Jones, Leader of the Council, to move the report, please? Sorry.
My name's not Clive.
Sorry. Councillor Imogen Shepherd-Debay, please. And do you have a seconder? Sorry.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. It's not often that you see a council administration willing to put limits on its own powers, trying to encourage discussion, debate and difference of opinions. But tonight we have here some attempts to move us in that direction so we can better support our residents. Much of what is recommended in this report is designed to speed up our council meetings. We seem to persistently have problems getting through all of the items on our agenda, and we need to be more efficient about how we use our time. That said, also in regards to this report, we do agree that we don't always get things quite right, which is why we want to withdraw recommendations 1A and 1D that are in this report. While they sounded like a good idea at the time to the members of the Constitutional Review Working Group, once it was put in front of our wider group of members, it was clear that these particular areas needed more work. So going through the remaining highlights of the remaining recommendations, 1B relates to limiting the amount of time the leader has to speak and sets a benchmark which encourages brevity and allows us to proceed to items of business on the agenda. Let me be clear about things that if there is something very specific that needs to be talked about for longer, it can be done so and have its own agenda item, or the committee can agree to suspend standing orders if necessary. 1C ensures that the whole council is aware of any cost implications of any motions that are put forward. 1E fixes the ambiguous problem that Mr. Johnson highlighted at our last meeting. 1F is to ensure that we are not hit with a barrage of questions on the same subject. And 1G is about getting everything done in the time that we have. Section 2 is about removing racial stereotypes when we refer to unlawful encampments in parks and leisure facilities. I am aware that some in this chamber feel that it does not quite go far enough, and I would suggest that they submit additional suggestions on how we might fix this to the Constitution Review Working Group. But I hope we can all agree that changing this wording, what we have here is progress at least. I don't believe 3 and 4 have anything controversial, and it adds the points on the work that the Deputy Leader is trying to achieve with town and parish councils. Recommendation 5 is about setting up our Climate Emergency Overview and Scrutiny Committee, which is very welcome progress. I'm advised that this will progress immediately after this meeting. If you have seen the amendment that was given to everybody, we can get on with it straight away and moving forward with tackling our climate emergency related issues. Recommendations 6 and 7 have already been agreed by the Planning Committee, and I hope and suspect that there is very little of issue here. I shall move on to the next bit. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody wish to speak against the report? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We don't disagree with all of this report, but we have some issues with some parts of it. I particularly welcome the U-turn on the proposed changes to questions by members, which would have renewed the scrutiny process by ensuring answers were posted on a far-flung part of the website, and supplementaries from the public may not have been answered at all. So I'm very glad to see that you've changed that particular point. However, we cannot agree to some of the items in 1C, 1E, 5 and 7. I would like to propose a named vote on those items, please. And we'd like the vote split as well, so we can vote in favour of the things we agree with. Is that okay?
Yeah, I was going to check. Would you like a separate vote on each item, or you want a block vote on
1C, 1E, 5 and 7? We would like named votes on, please. Sorry, 1C, 1E.
May I ask for some clarity, Madam Chair? Are you asking for separate named votes on each 4 items? You're not asking for them to be voted on as 4 things together?
No, separate name votes. Thank you. Sorry.
Right. Can you repeat them again so we can get them correct, please?
Yep, 1C, 1E, 5 and 7. 6 of my colleagues stand up as well.
Thank you.
I would like to speak on Rule 4.2.13.13, which is the item in 1C, which suggests that motions, the original 4.2.13.13 suggested that motions with a cost of over £1,000 are sent to executives. And this has been replaced by a rule which would require the CFO to cost every motion. That sounded a bit extreme to me. The basis for that argument was that the old process doesn't work. Well, as far as I can see, the old process has never actually been used, so I'm not very sure how you know it doesn't work. This will increase the change will increase the workload on finance and remove the scrutiny of financially significant decisions from executive. So I would like to oppose 1C.
Councillor Burgess, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We can support the majority of the revised recommendations, but we've got 2 objections. The first, we were really disappointed earlier in the year when we saw that travellers have been listed in the Constitution together in a list of problems like blighting and vermin. Totally unacceptable. The terminology now is proposed to change from travellers to unlawful encampments, but in our view, it doesn't solve the problem. We know what we're talking about, so it doesn't actually solve the problem. There's no justification for including an ethnic group or what they do specifically in our Constitution in that way, and certainly not in a list of problems that need sorting out. If you want additional suggestions, as Imogen said, remove it. Secondly, recommendation 4, allowing speech by the chair at exec meetings. Executive meetings are for business items and shouldn't be for speeches. I understand the reasoning behind it is to try and limit long speeches, but we would recommend the Constitution should allow for items of business only at exec and not for speeches. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Keith Baker, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yet again, major change to the agenda item has come out at the very last moment. The changes on this agenda item makes me wonder if the Constitutional Review Working Group actually take their work seriously. How on earth can 3 senior councillors, such as Councillors Imogen Shepherd-Debay, the leader Councillor Jones and Councillor Bray, agree at the CRWG these changes and then dramatically drop a couple of them at the very little notice? I actually wonder if Councillor Jones is trying to compete with the former Prime Minister for the number of U-turns. I would like to comment first on 1.e, the concept of noting something. The amendment refers to 4.2.2.1 J through M. When you look at these, you will see none of them in the Constitution are defined to note, although I will concede that the agenda sometimes uses the phrase to note. When you look at the 4 items here, they talk about dealing with remaining business from a previous council, to deal with reports from officers, and to deal with recommendations from the executive, committees and boards. Now, actually, the essence of this change is to change the time limits on any of these items from 30 minutes to 10 minutes. So by the time you have a proposer and a seconder who will take up 6 of these 10 minutes, only one other person would have been able to speak. Now let's assume this change had been implemented immediately after the coalition took control. At the extraordinary meeting of the council on the 22nd of June, agenda item 20 was the electoral cycle decision with a recommendation. This actually fits into 4.2.2.1.k to receive and deal with reports from officers. This would now only have a 10-minute debate, with only one other councillor being allowed to speak. This is utter nonsense. In fact, this very agenda item would fit under 4.2.2.1.m to consider any recommendations to the council from committees. What the hell are you doing? Why are they doing this? I think it to avoid scrutiny by councillors, and a pattern that appears to be recently emerging a lot. Now let me move on to 1G. Now this is a much simpler one to talk about. Currently, all 30-minute extensions are voted on, and then the proposals here to make that extension automatic. This is nonsense. You do not need a constitutional rule to do this. Just extend the meeting limit by 30 minutes. However, there is something in the small print. The changes confirm that voting on such an extension will continue on both committees and subcommittees. Why are they allowed to vote on an extension and councillors full council cannot? Either an extension is automatic for everyone or voted for by everyone. For these reasons, I do not support constitutional changes 1E and 1G.
Thank you. Councillor Gary Cowan, please.
Thank you. I'm looking at this from a really totally different point of view, in the sense that I see the Constitution as a Dickensian document. If you look back through the agenda here, you look at page 24 and page 42, there are questions from Councillor Baker and myself to this council, which probably wouldn't be there if we had a constitution fit for the 21st century, which we certainly don't. Councillor Sarah Kerr, the executive member responsible for customer excellence, stated that councillors as well as the public are customers and should be treated accordingly. I believe that on this point she is very wrong. Customers are not governed by our constitution, which can punish elected councillors for supporting the residents. If you buy a washing machine and you get bad service, you can complain to the service provider. You can also go and be very critical via all sorts of social media of the service provider. The Borough Council is a service provider, admittedly, a very expensive one. But if an elected councillor offers public support to that resident, then the Constitution can penalise them. And there are many examples of this. Customer excellence will only work, if the Constitution mirrors elected councillors, officers and public at large, and this it clearly does not. Tinkering at the edges and achieving nothing other than reducing the authority of elected councillors while everything wrong remains in the Constitution. I could give two fairly simple examples. One, recently there was a lot of debate on how a question can be asked at council if two persons ask the same question. And what happens is the mother of all parliaments does it. You can ask any question you like, and whoever answered the question said, I've answered that question a minute ago, and then you get your supplementary question, and away you go. But we can't do that here. We have a system where democratic service can take questions away and say they're identical, so one of you can't ask the question. Yet the supplementary question could be quite different. I think it's better to bite the bullet. Plus, as well, there are changes proposed in the planning interpretation that I would suggest are dubious, to say the least. It's better to bite the bullet and move to creating a constitution that's fit for the 21st century, that mirrors elected councillors' office and the public at large. And I'll be voting against every element of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Alison Swaddle, please.
Thank you. I'd like to address section 5 about overview and scrutiny. As I think most members know, I have chaired or vice chaired every overview and scrutiny committee in my time. And we all appreciate the importance of cross-party working. ONS is the critical friend. We only exist to add value, and it's essential that it is efficient. I think Rochelle used that word herself. Imogen, I do apologise. It has to be efficient. I cannot see how it is efficient and effective to only decide the number of members of each overview scrutiny committee at the annual meeting when we are also to appoint them. Group leaders, as all of those who have been group leaders know, it's quite difficult to balance your team, consider everybody's skills, their talents, the best committees to put them on. So for the life of me, I cannot see, there's no explanation in this paper at all why you would remove the number of councillors on each committee from the Constitution. To me, it makes complete sense to continue with 12 on overview scrutiny management. Completely get the previous point of it not necessarily having vice chairman on it, as long as they're one of the substitutes. Now that we're going to have 4 subcommittees under OS management, I understand that point. But why we're not going to set out the numbers, I don't know. I mean, we did have 8 on children's services, 8 on community and corporate, and 10 on overview and scrutiny. Again, I didn't quite ever understand why we had more on HOSP than on the others. I think they should all be the same. I would propose myself that they all had 8 on them. So I cannot support this because it just would not be efficient. We'd have to agree at annual council the number of people, and then we'd have to adjourn for 15, 20 minutes at least, while group leaders could go away to decide how to fit with the numbers that were put. So please do not vote in favour of this particular section of the amendments. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bray, would you like to add?
Yes,
anything?
thank you. Assuming, wait a minute, Councillor Barron's got his hand up.
Sorry, Councillor Barron.
Right, thank you, Madam Mayor. I find this report terribly disappointing. It's really badly set out. And really the main problem with it, it doesn't justify anything. It just says, this is it, take it or leave it. I mean, you really want to know why it's a good thing. Because some of the arguments are a little impenetrable. I just want to talk about 8.2.8 on page 140. On the planning committee at the moment, at the end of the debate, the chairman, or at least before May, the chairman would ask, is there an alternative proposal? And if there is, they can take a vote on that. And if that fails, we go back to the officer recommendation. Nice, clean, predictable procedure. This amendment says that at the end of the debate, some member will put his hand up, but whether it's in favour of the officer recommendation or alternative, it doesn't say. It seems to be a matter of chance. Now, how could that work? That is not predictable. You've got one member who wants to vote for the planning application and another who doesn't. They both put their hands up. Who wins? 50-50. It doesn't work. Could someone explain to me what the point of this amendment is, please?
Thank you. Councillor Prubray, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As a seconder,
Sorry, Councillor Bray, I think I had a late hand. Sorry, Councillor Jim Frome, please. Sorry. And Stephen Conway too.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I appreciate the amount of work that's gone in by the reviewing of this constitution, and I understand the desire to improve it. But continuous tinkering over the past few years has made the constitution not understandable. How many people in this chamber would actually say that they understand the constitution, the rules and the guidelines of which how we behave? It's not in its current format fit for purpose. It's not a benefit to our residents. Further tinkering just means that we will need even more officer support to understand our own rules and guidelines to how we conduct business. That is not appropriate. I can't support additional tinkering to something that doesn't work and is not fit for purpose. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Conway, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wasn't going to speak, but Chris's comments on the planning committee side of this just prompt me to remind him that members of the planning committee approved these constitutional changes. And I don't remember any dissenting voices when that happened.
Thank you. Councillor Prubray, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As a seconder for this, I do acknowledge this is a very long list of amendments. And if I may be permitted a party political point, that might be because after 20 years of Conservative tinkering, there's quite a lot of the Constitution that needs sorting out. I do have some sympathy with both Gary and Jim, but I don't think with the current state of the council and all the other things that are going on, we can commit to rewriting the Constitution a priority for now. But your point is understood. We've withdrawn two of the proposals because they turned out to be like the giant rat of Sumatra in Sherlock Holmes, something for which the world is not yet prepared. And it was simply too difficult to revise them in time for the meeting. So of the rest of them, 1B is to change an incorrect paragraph reference, which has been wrong since at least 2015. I think you've misunderstood 1C. 1C is to get rid of the thing that is tonight going to prevent us debating Charles Marget's motion. What we want is the ability to debate motions in the full knowledge of what the financial consequences of them would be. And that's what this amendment does, instead of which poor Charles has to have his motion dismissed at the end of the meeting and not allowed to be discussed. We don't think that's very satisfactory. I understand the concerns about the points to note, only to note, but they wouldn't apply to most items because most items are more than to note. So the tenants' charter, for example, although it had two to notes in it, it has other things, and so it would get a full half hour. But those kind of amendments are being made because due to rules brought in about 15 years ago, we have limited our time for council meetings, unlike nearly every other council in the country, and therefore we cannot squash our business into the time. I understand the point about 1G, but all we're trying to do is get the meetings consistent, to take away the fact that if a meeting starts at 8 o'clock, you still have to finish at 10:30, whereas if you start at 7 o'clock, you have to finish at 10:30. It doesn't make any sense. I also understand Labour's sensitivities about the word travellers and the unlawful encampments. We can't take out in something to cover that point because it has to be covered somewhere as whose responsibility it is to deal with it. So I think unlawful encampments is a point that's better than travellers. and I wish you could accept tonight that that's a step in the right direction. We will look at what else we can do with it, but we do understand that it's very far from ideal at the moment. As for the overview and scrutiny committees, that the issue is that if we actually set the size of the committees in the Constitution, then when we get to deciding proportionality for committees at the annual council meeting, we would have to do a constitutional change if we couldn't make the numbers work.
Sorry, Councillor Bray, you're out of time.
Sorry, that was going to be my last point. So that's why that's in there, to stop us having to do that.
Councillor Imogen Dupre, would you like the right to reply?
And I think that Prue really is sort of stand, and I think Prue really has sort of covered it all. But I mean, I hope that people listen to what we've said and understand why we've said it. So,
thank you. We can now go to the vote. We're voting on item 1B, and that's a show of hands. Can I have show of hands for 1B? Against? Abstain? Thank you. 1B is carried. Thank you.
So 1C, it will be a recorded vote. So if you can say whether it is for, against or abstention, please. Councillor Akhtar.
Against.
Councillor Baker.
Against.
Councillor Bath.
Against.
Councillor Rachel Bishop-Perth.
For.
Councillor Blumenthal.
Against.
Councillor Bowring.
Against.
Councillor Boyt.
For.
Councillor Bray.
For.
Councillor Burgess.
For.
Councillor Chadwick.
Against.
Councillor Conway.
For.
Councillor Cornish.
For.
Councillor Cowan.
Against.
Councillor Croy. Councillor Cunnington.
Against.
Councillor Davis.
Against.
Councillor Dennis.
For.
Councillor Ferris.
For.
Councillor Firmager.
Against.
Councillor Fishwick.
For.
Councillor Fruin.
For.
Councillor G.
For.
Councillor Hare. Councillor Harper.
Against.
Councillor Pauline Hallier-Simons.
Against.
Councillor Howe.
Against.
For. Councillor Jones.
For.
Councillor Norman Jorgensen.
Against.
Councillor Pauline Jorgensen.
Against.
Councillor Kaiser.
Against.
Councillor Kerr.
For.
Councillor Loyes.
Against.
Councillor Maher.
For.
Councillor Mulvin.
For.
Councillor Charles McGatts.
Against.
Councillor Rebecca McGatts.
Against.
Councillor Mather.
For.
Councillor Mickleby.
For.
Councillor Monroe.
Against.
Councillor Neal.
For.
Councillor Rance.
Against.
Councillor Rowland.
For.
Councillor Shenton.
For.
Councillor Imogen Shepherd-Debay.
For.
Councillor Rochelle Shepherd-Debay.
For.
Councillor Carl Ryan Smith.
For.
Councillor Mike Smith.
For.
Councillor Soane.
Against.
Councillor Swaddle.
Against.
Councillor Eunice.
Against.
Point of order, Madam Mayor.
Okay, what's your point of order?
My point of order is 4.2.15.5. We did have 6 people stand up, I believe, for the recorded vote on the electoral commission, but we did not before this vote. And as far as I understood it, did we? Yeah. Do you want a recorded vote on every single one of these? We seem to be going through every single one, though. I didn't think you'd requested recorded vote. I didn't think you'd requested separate votes on all the other items, such as A, where everybody voted in favour. So we did have we'd request a recorded vote. We requested a recorded vote on the items I'd identified. We voted on one item so far without a recorded vote. We've had a recorded vote on one item. So my question then is, sorry for getting that wrong, is that can't we lump all the other items together under this? We've asked for a recorded vote on four of them. Can't we just vote on all the others together? Right, fine. Thank you.
One C is carried. Thank you.
We're going to 1E now, and that's a recorded vote. So if you can say for, against, or abstention, and that's Councillor Akhtar.
Against.
Councillor Baker.
Against.
Councillor Bath.
Against.
Councillor Rachel Bishop-Furr. For. Councillor Blumenthal.
Against.
Councillor Bowring.
Against.
Councillor Boyt.
Abstain.
Councillor Bray.
For.
Councillor Burgess.
For.
Councillor Chadwick.
Against.
Councillor Conway.
For.
Councillor Cornish.
For.
Councillor Cowan.
Against.
Councillor Croy.
For.
Councillor Cunnington.
Against.
Councillor Davis.
Against.
Councillor Dennis.
For.
Councillor Ferris.
For.
Councillor Firmiger.
Against.
Councillor Fishwick.
For.
Councillor Fruin.
Abstain.
Councillor G.
For.
Councillor Hare.
For.
Councillor Harper.
Against.
Councillor Hellier-Simons.
Against.
Councillor Howe.
Against.
Councillor Johnson.
For.
Councillor Jones.
For.
Councillor Norman Jorgensen.
Against.
Pauline Jorgensen.
Against.
Councillor Kaiser.
Against.
Councillor Kerr.
For.
Councillor Loyes.
Against.
Councillor Maher.
For.
Councillor Malvern.
For.
Councillor Charles Magatz.
Against.
Councillor Rebecca Magatz.
Against.
Councillor Mather.
For.
Councillor Mickleborough.
For.
Councillor Monroe.
Against.
Councillor Neal.
For.
Councillor Rance.
Against.
Councillor Rowland.
For.
Councillor Shenton.
For.
Councillor Imogen Shepherd-Bay.
For.
Councillor Rochelle Shepherd-Bay. For. Councillor Caroline Smith.
For.
Councillor Mike Smith.
For.
Councillor Bill Soane.
Against.
Councillor Swaddle.
Against.
Councillor Eunice.
Against.
1E is carried.
Hello. Can I have a show of hands for 1F, please? 4. Against? Abstain? Carried. Show of hands for 1G, please. 4. Was that okay? 4, 1G, please. Against? Ab 1G is carried. Thank you. Moving on to number 2. 4, hands up, please. 4.
Chaos. You'd have thought
Number 2. That it be noted, Rule 5.210O, responsibilities of the executive member for environment, sport and leisure, set out in paragraph 8 of the report, will be amended. Number 2. Okay, thank you. 4. Against? Abstain? Thank you. Number 2 is not carried. Thank you. Moving on to voting for number 3. 4. Number 3. 4. 3. Sorry, I now see.
counting Conservative Prime Ministers.
Against? Abstain? Number 3 is carried. Thank you. Moving on to number 4. 4, please. Hands 4. Against? Abstain? Number 4 is not carried. Number 5 is a recorded vote. Thank you.
Please say whether you're for, against or abstain. Councillor Akhtar.
Against.
Councillor Baker.
Against.
Councillor Barr.
Against.
Councillor Bishop Firth.
For.
Councillor Blumenthal.
Again.
Councillor Bowring.
Against.
Councillor Boyt.
For.
Councillor Bray.
For.
Councillor Burgess.
For.
Councillor Chadwick.
Against.
Councillor Conway.
For.
Councillor Cornish.
For.
Councillor Cowan.
Against.
Councillor Croy. Councillor Cunnington.
Against.
Councillor Davis.
Against.
Councillor Dennis.
For.
Councillor Ferris.
For.
Councillor Firminger.
Against.
Councillor Fishwick.
For.
Councillor Fruin.
Abstain.
Councillor G.
For.
Councillor Hare.
For.
Councillor Harper.
Against.
Councillor Hellier-Simons.
Against.
Councillor Howe.
Against.
Councillor Johnson.
For.
Councillor Jones.
For.
Councillor Norman Jorgensen.
Against.
Councillor Pauline Jorgensen.
Against.
Councillor Kaiser.
Against.
Councillor Kerr.
For.
Councillor Loys.
Against.
Councillor Maher.
For.
Councillor Mulvin.
For.
Councillor Charles Maggetts.
Against.
Councillor Rebecca Maggetts.
Against.
Councillor Mather.
For.
Councillor Andrew Micklebur.
For.
Councillor Monroe.
Yeah.
Councillor Neal.
For.
Councillor Rance.
Against.
Councillor Rowland.
For.
Councillor Shenton.
For.
Councillor Imogen Shepherd-Debay.
For.
Councillor Rochelle Shepherd-Debay.
For.
Councillor Caroline Smith.
For.
Councillor Mike Smith.
For.
Councillor Bill Soame.
Against.
Councillor Swaddle.
Against.
Councillor Eunice.
Against.
Number 5 is carried.
Thank you. Voting on number 6. Hands up for, please. Number 6. Against? Abstain? Number 6 is carried. Number 7 is a recorded vote.
Please say for, against or abstention. Councillor Akhtar.
Against.
Councillor Baker.
For the last time, against.
Councillor Barr.
Against.
Councillor Rachel Bishop Firth.
For.
Councillor Blumenthal.
Against.
Councillor Bowring.
Against.
Councillor Boyd.
For.
Councillor Bray.
For.
Councillor Burgess.
For.
Councillor Chadwick.
Against.
Councillor Conway.
For.
Councillor Cornish.
For.
Councillor Cowan.
Against.
Councillor Croy. Councillor Cunnington.
Against.
Councillor Davis.
Against.
Councillor Dennis.
For.
Councillor Ferris.
For.
Councillor Firmager.
Against.
Councillor Fishwick.
For.
Councillor Fruin.
Against.
Councillor G.
For.
Councillor Hare.
For.
Councillor Harper.
Against.
Councillor Hilly Simons.
Against.
Councillor Howe.
Against.
Councillor Johnson.
For.
Councillor Jones.
For.
Councillor Norman Jorgensen.
Against.
Councillor Pauline Jorgensen.
Against.
Councillor Kaiser.
Against.
Councillor Kerr.
For.
Councillor Loyes.
Against.
Councillor Maher.
For.
Councillor Mulvin.
For.
Councillor Magetts. Charles Magetts.
Against.
Councillor Rebecca Magetts.
Against.
Councillor Mather.
For.
Councillor Mickleborough.
For.
Councillor Monroe.
Against.
Councillor Neal.
For.
Councillor Rance.
Against.
Councillor Rowland.
For.
Councillor Shenton.
For.
Councillor Imogen Shepherd de Bay.
For.
Councillor Rochelle Shepherd de Bay.
For.
Councillor Caroline Smith.
For.
Councillor Mike Smith.
For.
Bill Soane. Councillor Bill Soane.
Against.
Councillor Alison Swaddle.
Against.
Councillor Eunice.
Against.
And number 7 is carried.
Thank you. I'm now moving on to the recommendations in the supplementary report. I'm going to take this as a block vote. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'd like a show of hands on the report for. Show of hands. Against? Abstain? Recommendation was carried, and I'm also going to announce a comfort break, please. 5 minutes. Sorry, Councillor Croy.
Just very quickly, do these changes come into effect immediately or at the next meeting?
Next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Moving on to item 65, members' question time. I have Councillor Graham Howe to ask a question of the Executive Member for Children's Services. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, first of all, thank you on behalf of many members for the relief you just let us have. Most necessary. Given that we all know that the demand for SEND places is growing, can the lead member explain how capacity is going to be accommodated in a timely manner, having 2 new schools built at Rook's Nest and Grays Farm, which will take a considerable amount of time for planning consent, inclusion in the local plan, and the funding as yet to be agreed by the Department of Education? Thank you.
Good evening, Graham. Thank you for your question. It is the case that demand for education, health and care plan needs assessments continues to increase, which provides for additional pressure on SEND places within the borough as more assessments are converted into education, health and care plans. In addition to the 2 new schools that we are currently applying for at Rook's Nest and Grays Farm, we look forward to the opening of Oak Tree Special School in Winnersh from September 2023. In the meantime, we continue to work with Addington Special School and have had initial discussions with Chiltern Way Special School on increasing the numbers of specialist places available locally. We are also working on delivering a programme of system change activity to support schools, settings and families that will assist in ensuring that children with special educational needs and disabilities are identified early, supported into the right provision to meet their needs at the right time, while also reducing demand for the special school places. And Madam Mayor, if I may take advantage of the fact that I'm on my feet, can I cite Standing Order 4112M to continue the meeting beyond 10:30?
Seconder? Thank you. Can we all vote on it? Against? Abstain? That's carried. We'll stay on after 10:30. Thank you. Sorry. Do you have a supplementary?
I do, Madam Mayor, despite the competition from the virtual world. I just wonder if actually this is an excuse to build on the sites that the Liberal Democrats who previously said that they're built over their dead bodies. And therefore, I mean, what criteria is being used to make these sites as being suitable for schools when there are other sites, such as Farley Hill School, that maybe could be used and considered, not only Farley Hill, where capital and operating budgets could be more closely managed?
Interesting supplementary. Farley Hill is being considered along with all the other assets that the council has, so that we can look for places for not just special schools, but also satellite buildings, outreach, whatever else we can possibly do. And I am slightly surprised that you asked me this question, given that less than 6 months ago, you were the executive member and you had done absolutely nothing since 2019 to provide extra capacity. We are doing everything in our power to cope with this increasing demand, which you knew about, which was in the previous SEND strategy and has not been addressed. We will continue to do that. As for the idea that there are sort of magic solutions, sometimes you have to do what you have to do. We need those SEND places, and we have to act like mature grown-up adults and make difficult decisions, which you signally failed to do as an administration.
Thank you. Councillor Lauren Blumenthal to ask a question of the Executive Member for Equalities, Inclusion and Fighting Poverty.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The government announced in May that it will be extending its Household Support Fund scheme in October. So this council knew it would get a lump sum to spend on helping struggling residents. Please can you confirm that it is the government's household support fund that will be funding free school meals in the borough during holidays right up to May 2023?
Thank you for your question, Laura. The government announced its intention to continue the Household Support Fund in May 2022, but there was no guarantee that Woking Borough Council would receive any of this money. If we did get funding, there was no guarantee of what amount we would receive and whether there would be any conditions set on how it should be spent. As we've seen from the last few weeks, the government announcing its intentions is no guarantee that those intentions will be delivered. Our council officers got draft guidance in August of how grants could be spent. We got the final confirmation that we would get money, the amount that we would receive, and the final guidance on how it could be spent on the 30th of September 2022. Wokingham's Lib Dem administration had meanwhile decided that regardless of the government's funding decisions, we would fund those families who rely on benefits-related free school meals during the term time so they can feed their children during school holidays. We guaranteed that we will provide this funding up until and including the May half term in 2023. Given the council's financial position, it would have been very difficult to provide this help without support from central government, but we were prepared to make this commitment to support local families. Some of the household support fund money will be spent on delivering this commitment. The remainder will be used to provide grants to other households in the borough who are struggling with the cost of living and to fund our Hardship Alliance partners who are administering the scheme and providing advice to residents in need in these difficult times.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary?
I do. Thank you for your response. Can you tell me why there's a lack of transparency in council communications around where the household support fund has come from and how much has been awarded to this council this month? These key bits of information are not included anywhere around this month's award. Please can there be more transparency with residents?
Thank you, Laura. You're a member of the Working Party, of course, and we will take on board any feedback about how we can improve the communications. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Chris Bowring to ask a question of the Executive Member for Environment, Sport and Leisure. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. At the September meeting of the Executive, it was resolved to reduce the number of blue waste bags for property per annum from 80 to 54. As an afterthought, or so it seemed to me, you decided to keep the possibility of more blue bags for larger households under review. What exactly do you propose to review? And why, after being in control of the council for 5 months, were you unable to bring the fully formed policy to the Executive?
I think it's important to clarify that the report presented to the Executive was an option paper that asked the Executive to consider and approve one of two options in relation to the reduction in provision of blue bags to residents. The Executive meetings provide an opportunity for the Executive to review, discuss and challenge the options proposed, and that is exactly what occurred during the meeting. It's not a rubber stamp exercise. The report explained that the impact of both options on larger families had been considered, that any negative impact as a result of a reduction in provision will be mitigated, ideally through the provision of additional green recycling bags, given that 57% of the composition of the contents of the average blue bag is recyclable. The Executive discussed the two options, and whilst it was unanimously agreed that option one, a reduction in number of blue bags from 80 to 54, to stay within budget, should be progressed. It was felt that alongside delivery of this option, officers should also consider other ways to cater for larger families in addition to the provision of extra green recycling bags.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary?
Well, I think the implication there is that you were considering more blue bags. The decision to reduce from 80 to 54 was a key decision. Came to the Executive to increase some households for blue bags. Would that be a key decision too? And if so, that will have to go to the Executive and should be on the Executive Forward programme. And would you be able to implement that in time for whenever it is you are going to set the blue bags out, January or February?
I'm sorry, I didn't get the question. Could you?
Sorry? You didn't understand the question. You're intending to increase blue bags. That was a possibility. I'm asking you, that could be a key decision. Are you going to have sufficient time to get it through the democratic process before the distribution of the new bags?
If we increase the blue bags,
Can I help? It was the question was, if you have to, then you decide then to increase the number of bags for the larger households. That is a key decision. Why isn't it on the forward programme? And if it isn't on the forward programme, have you got enough time to actually make that decision before they have to be distributed?
why is that a key decision?
Well, that was the question. Is it?
Sorry, can I just move on? Can you take this out and send emails to each other, please? Thank you. Yeah. I should make that an official email to each other to clarify. Thank you. I'm now moving on to the minutes of committee meetings and ward matters. Can I have a show of hands who'd like to ask questions? Thank you. And please keep your hands up and please reminded we have 20 minutes for this. I'm going to make a start whilst we're writing down. No, keep your hands up. I'm going to make a start. Councillor Maria G, please ask her question. Please keep your hands up.
Thank you. I have a question for Councillor Rachel Bishop-Furr. Some of my local residents have had difficulty accessing timetables for the new leisure centre. A lot of the advice was to go online. It has improved recently. I tried to look for the equality impact assessments for the centre, but they started as soon as you walked through the door rather than accessing information prior to walking through the door. So I'm just wondering whether we can have equality impact assessments that look at access from cradle to grave, as it were, and will they be published on the website? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria. I've also had a number of queries of the sort that you've just described. I think it's really important that we have very good, very thorough equalities impact assessments. I have also been talking to the officers about these. We've got some ideas on how we can improve them, and we have a meeting, in fact, next week to review some of these ideas. But yes, in summary, I believe that we need to have very full, very thorough equality impact assessments. And yes, I have asked if they can be published on the website, with the exception of where we do agree that they can't for confidentiality reasons. But as a general rule, yes, they should be on the website.
Thank you. Councillor Laura Blumenthal, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is to the Executive Member for Highways. Does Council's cycling infrastructure plans propose removing the roundabouts on Nightingale Road in Woodley? This has worried my residents as they were originally installed on safety grounds. Please can you explain why removing the roundabouts, including one right next to a primary school, is now considered safe?
Thank you for your question. There isn't any firm proposals to remove any roundabouts. You're talking about the LC whip. The LC whip is at very high level, and they are just ideas at the moment. The next stage is then to look at what would be the primary routes. And am I talking about the same thing? Yeah, Nightingale Road. Yeah. So it's the LC WIP you're talking about, not the active travel route. Yeah. So that's at a very high level. We'll then be going to the primary routes and looking at those particular ones in a priority order, and detailed designs will then be undertaken, and there will be consultation on those detailed designs.
Thank you. Councillor Andy Croy, please.
Thank you. My question is for the executive member for the environment, for climate emergency. We had a meeting of the Obion Scrutiny Management Committee earlier this month, and we discussed the climate emergency and solar farms in that meeting. And so it's a follow-up from that, really. A couple of weeks ago, the government minister for the environment said that they're going to they're going to reclassify agricultural land to prevent the building of solar farms on land. Now, we have 3 or 4 solar farms planned on our agricultural land. Could the member tell me, will this reclassification of our land prevent us from building the 3 or 4 extra solar farms that we have yet to start?
Thank you for your question, Andy. I mean, firstly, Barkham Solar Farm wouldn't be affected because obviously planning's already been granted for that. For future solar farms, so my understanding is this will still, how it's balanced at planning. So it's about how much weight is given to these things at planning. So at the moment, land that's on best and most versatile land, so which is agricultural grades 1, 2 and 3A, it's advised that we have no development, but it can be superseded if anything should be going on there that actually is more beneficial, such as solar farms. And it's what they're saying is extending it to include more classifications of agricultural land. So it will still go through the planning process, and it's about the right determination of weight on there. Having said that, that policy that they're saying that could potentially come out, it's not based on evidence. It's actually against what the Department of Base is actually advising. And it would leave only agricultural land that is not suitable for solar farms. So it would actually mean that hardly any solar farms could be built in the country, and we wouldn't meet our climate goals as a country. Just interestingly, currently 0.1% of land in the UK has solar farms on it. And if we were to build solar farms to meet our climate expectations, there would still be the land taken to cover that would still be half the amount that we currently use for golf courses in the country. That's how little it actually takes. And if you add all the golf courses in the country, all the airport space, and if you add all the current solar farms and the solar farms that we would need, it takes up 1% of total land in the country, and currently 56% of land is agricultural land. So just to put it in context, this was ill-advised of the government to say this, and I suspect another U-turn.
Thank you. Councillor David Cornish, please.
Thank you. A councillor for Lindsay, a question from Lindsay Ferris. As he will know, the council has now submitted the Finch Hampstead Neighbourhood Development Plan for Regulation 16 consultation. And under the provisions of the Localism Act, it states that decisions on planning applications will be made using both the local plan and the neighbourhood plan. And under the provisions of the National Planning Policy Framework, it states that in situation where the presumption in favour of sustainable development applies to housing applications, the adverse impact of allowing development that conflicts with the neighbourhood plan is likely to significantly outweigh the benefits. I'm sure many members here will be concerned that some neighbourhood plans already made, and I think particularly of Barkham and Shinfield, do not seem to have weighed particularly heavily on the minds of our planning team in some of their decisions. Could the lead member for planning ensure that when it comes into force next spring, the Finch Hampstead Neighbourhood Plan will be given the maximum possible weighting by the planning team of this council when determining planning application?
Thank you, David. The answer I'll give is yes. I've had some responses back from the planning officers, and they've given me some provisional comments. So I can, at the due time, I'll let you know.
Thank you. Councillor Gary Cowan, please.
Oh, sorry, I was already scratching my head.
Thank you for your honesty. Councillor Morag Melvin, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is for the Executive Member for Environment, Sport and Leisure. There have been numerous complaints from residents who live near the Latimer Road recreation ground about antisocial behaviour in the area. The ASB team and the police have both been very supportive, and there does seem to have been a reduction in drug dealing and drug use. But we do still have problems. Obscene graffiti being sprayed on the children's slide, litter and broken glass in the playground, and also young adults who use the area as a place to drink and smoke. Could you update me, please, on the plans to reduce antisocial behaviour in the park? Thank you.
Yes, I was sorry to hear about the problems that are being caused by antisocial behaviour at Latimer Road. I can confirm that officers have spoken to the play officer, and he is going to arrange some new signage to be installed there, as has previously been suggested. Obscene or otherwise offensive graffiti can, of course, be reported to the Cleaner and Greener team, and they will arrange for its removal. I've also asked the team to undertake a thorough clean of the area. On the council's internal database, there are no recorded reports of ASB at Latimer Road play area, so I would urge anyone witnessing ASB to report it directly by emailing asb@wokingham.gov.uk, or indeed report to the police by phoning 101 if it's a criminal matter. The location will also be added to the ASB team schedule of regular out-of-hours visits.
Thank you. Councillor Barry Path, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's Barry Bart, not Barry Path. But it's
I
easily
do apologise.
That's okay. That's okay.
It's my writing.
So my question is for Councillor Paul Pitchwick, Executive Member for Highways. Crossfield School is in my ward on Chinfield Road, which has no safe crossing near the school entrance. And over the years, traffic congestion at peak periods has worsened, and children's safety crossing the road has become a major issue. The parents and the school leadership have asked me to talk to Woking Borough Council to see if they can install a safe crossing near the school entrance. Some officer involvement has been welcomed and coming forward, but it's taken a long time. So I'd like to ask you whether you would like to agree and meet me and the school leadership to assess children's safety crossing the road and to scope the need for installing a safe crossing near the school entrance.
Thank you very much for your question. You mentioned that there's been some officer involvement already, so it may well be on the integrated transport list for work being developed and survey work. So I'll certainly look into that. And I'm quite happy to come and meet you on site with the head teacher of the school to have a look at the situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rachel Shepherd-Dupre.
My question's for Ian. The play area at Dolphin Close, something hit 2 bollards, and when I reported it to the council, the solution was to put a traffic cone onto one of them. They're very dangerous, by the way. And the second one, they said, oh, I don't have a second traffic cone. Maybe I'll come back and get it in another day. They still haven't come back and done it. Could you please, can be fixed so it's safe for children?
Without doubt, we will. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Phil Cunnington, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've been asked by owners of small businesses in my ward and owners that live in my ward of small businesses which are in the town to ask the question because they're very concerned about the car parking charge changes that have been announced. They're worried that it will deter shoppers, not least on Sundays, when many of them open at cost or even a loss in order to try and make the town centre a worthwhile place to visit on a Sunday. So the question is, does the Lib Dem and Labour coalition not care how their policy may damage these retailers and put a close for business sign on Wokingham Town Centre?
Thank you for your question. there is a call in next week, as you probably realise. If the Overview and Scrutiny Committee do decide that will go ahead and is not referred back to executive, a traffic regulation order will then be drafted, and the public and businesses will have a chance to air their views during that consultation period. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Andrew Mickleborough, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is to the Executive Member for Active Travel, Highways and Transport. A number of times faults with streetlights have been due to cabling issues, which I understand rely on SSEN to rectify. I believe this is the case regarding 3 adjacent streetlights on a very busy arterial road in my Hawkton ward. I first reported these at the start of the year. Contractors' efforts to get the lights working seem to have failed. My question is, when cabling problems occur on very busy roads where lighting problems arguably cause significant road safety issues, are there any legal responsibilities on the different stakeholders to get the matter resolved in a timely manner? Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Andrew. Scottish and Southern Electric Network do have a standard 35-day turnaround, which they are then meant to report through to Ofgem. What I don't know, and I can't find out at the moment through officers at the moment, if how that feedback comes back to Woking Borough Council. And when they do fix any lights, or if there is a delay, what mechanism and communication channels are open from SSEN back to Woking Borough Council. This has come up a couple of weeks ago on a couple of streetlights which I reported, and I'll certainly look out and find that information and respond back to you, because it's that communication side when they're out on site, going back to Ofgem. What information are we getting back from Ofgem as well?
Thank you. Councillor Charles Magretts, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is for Councillor Bray. At the council meeting in July, I asked if the council was committed to the provision of a new standalone sixth form, extra year 7 places and extra SEN provision at Bowhunt School by September 23. She responded that this was the case and agreed to provide regular updates to local members. And one update followed around a week later. Last week, an officer within Children's Services told me that delivery of the new sixth form building by September 2023 is now highly unlikely. Temporary classrooms may be needed to allow this, and made no mention of the SEN provision. In a subsequent discussion I had with a senior member of the Bowhunt Trust, the comment was made that the pace of movement within WBC on this issue is glacial, and there's been no meaningful progress since July. I'd like to ask Councillor Bray to look into this to find out what's going wrong, and also to clarify who will pay for the financial cost of the temporary classrooms now necessary. Please can she ensure progress is accelerated to ensure there are no further delays. I'd finally like to ask if she would repeat again her commitment that the sixth form year 7 places and additional SEN provision will be delivered in September 2023, and to commit to provide regular updates for local members of all political parties, basically, on the delivery of this critical piece of local infrastructure.
Thank you for your, I think, about 6 questions in there, Charles. We are committed to it. There are, as you will understand, complications to do with the fact that there's already been one design. We need to change the design. And there's quite a lot of other things going on in Children's Services, some of which Councillor Howe referred to earlier on in the meeting. So, yes, I am committed to it. We have every intention of opening provision in September. All of the elements that you mentioned are included in that, and we will do whatever we can. And I will, as I have been before, be committed to trying to deliver it. We have a meeting with Bohunt on the 31st of October where we will be discussing progress, and I have already initiated a system of weekly emails to Bohunt to tell them what the process is that was put in place a couple of weeks ago.
Thank you. Councillor John Kaiser, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Now, my question is for Lindsay Ferris, Councillor Lindsay Ferris. My residents are very concerned about the number of consultation letters they're getting from developers now, and their surrounding wards. 400 homes in Evidence, 1,000 homes in Arborfield, and another 1,000 homes in Barkham. Are you allowing the developers to write our local plan?
No.
That doesn't help, does it, Lindsay?
Excuse me. Thank you. Somebody else would like to ask a question. That's Councillor Keith Baker, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is for the Leader of the Council. And can I say right from the beginning of this speech that the issues I'm raising now started with the previous administration, okay? My request is, can you as leader help in completing these code of conduct complaints? A variety of Woodley Town councillors have six outstanding code of conduct complaints in the system, 4 of which have been in the system since 2020. The other 2 in the system since 2021. So as we celebrate, or should I say commiserate, a 2-year anniversary of the very first one, which was acknowledged on the 8th of October, 2020, I'm reaching out to you, Councillor Jones. I'm reaching out to you to help me get these complaints processed as soon as possible. Now, periodically over those 2 years, I've been in communication with Andrew Moulton, as we would expect, about the lack of progress on these complaints, but nothing has happened. I did get a response about a particular set of complaints saying he was in contact with the party of the person being complained against nationally to see what influence they can bring to the matter. As far as I can see, that's just designed to allow the council to avoid making a decision. One individual who has several outstanding complaints constantly brags at our town council meeting that he is untouchable, and all complaints, which were total nonsense, were, in his words, rubbish. He even went to the press following a determination and named all participants and everything about the complaint, which in itself is a code of conduct break. Now, on the 28th of February this year, I wrote both the Chief Executive and Andrew Moulton asking for rapid action. But as you can see, the fact that I am asking for help here now is nothing has happened. Woodley Town councillors now have totally and utterly lost all faith in the WVC Standards Committee, such that they will no longer submit any complaints because why bother? Because nothing will happen. Can you please help me?
Thank you very much for your question, Keith, and thank you for acknowledging when these happened quite some time ago. And they really should have been dealt with. You will know, having been leader of the council before, that you don't know everything that is going on, certainly in the Standards Board, you don't. But I will work with you to get some solution. And one thing I will say is absolutely nobody is untouchable. Nobody.
Thank you. Sorry, that's all we have time for. I'm sure the people who have written questions can put them through to the executives. Sorry about that. That took 20 minutes. Thank you. I'm now moving on to item 67, which is statements by the leader, executive members and deputy exec members. Thank you. Now, Councillor Clive Jones, you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. We all know that there is a cost of living crisis affecting all of us. This has been made worse by the government's mini budget a few weeks ago. Although much of the budget has been reversed this week, considerable damage has been done that will see mortgages for millions of people increase by over £500 a month, a staggering £6,000 a year. Many families in Wokingham will be struggling to cope with the increased costs of food. Over the last year or so, some foods have risen by 30% or more. On top of this, they have to struggle with increases in energy costs, which have doubled since last winter and could be set to rise again in March, now that the energy price guarantee that was to have been for 2 years has been cut back to only 6 months. Help is available for those struggling due to the cost of living crisis in Wokingham Borough. The council is working with partnership in partnership with Age UK, Berkshire, Citizens Advice, Wokingham, First Days Children Charity, Wokingham Food Bank and Wokingham United Charities to respond to these issues locally. This group, known as the Hardship Alliance, will be launching a range of initiatives in the weeks ahead to help residents from all across the borough. The Hardship Alliance is bringing the borough together to help all those in need as we respond to the cost of living crisis. With the Borough Council, they are going to provide a helping hand to people through a variety of projects in the winter. Financial pressures continue to rise, and these schemes will use our well-established voluntary and community sector to step up once again to do what they do best, provide a lifeline to those who need one. Madam Mayor, I would urge residents to feed into this incredible support already offered across the area's voluntary, community and faith sectors. Residents are urged to come forward as soon as possible if they are struggling. Initial projects to help them include providing support, reassurance and advice for those who are struggling, setting up places and activities where people can visit and keep warm throughout the winter. The Alliance and council staff will work together in community locations to provide advice and guidance for anyone in the community that needs help. Support for those in period poverty. A new round of household support fund to help those in need of support with food and energy costs. Create an online cost of living help hub to guide people to help available and to promote ways to get involved with support in the community. More details on these and other schemes will be announced once that they are finalised. The cost of living crisis is putting many of our residents under enormous pressure, and we are working with partners to alleviate problems as best as we can. We cannot do everything, but in collaboration with our excellent voluntary and community sector, we can offer help to those many people in increasing need. If residents need a helping hand in these difficult times, they should reach out to One Front Door as soon as possible. Their team of experienced volunteers are speaking to many local people who are facing the same issues, including many people who haven't had to ask for help before. They have enormous experience and will support residents to find the best solutions to whatever it is that you are facing. Madam Mayor, this administration will do whatever we can to help the least well-off residents through these very difficult times. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Paul Fishwick, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. At the 21st of July meeting of Council, I highlighted that I'd written to the Police and Crime Commissioner on the 24th of June, related to the lack of mobile speed enforcement across the borough over the past 3 years. I received a response on the 13th of September, which provided information on the roads policing unit, where every month they are allocated a number of priority roads to target with enforcement work due to the high level of collisions because of excessive speed and high casualty rates due to drivers using mobile phones. The PCC said that thankfully for Wokingham, none of our roads currently feature in these categories. However, the PCC has indicated that Thames Valley Police detected 671 speeding offences on Wokingham roads during April 2022 from their fixed and mobile speed cameras, with the vast majority being in 30-mile-an-hour speed limit areas. I don't know how many cameras this refers to or for what duration of April. I have therefore asked for clarification on several points raised in the PCC's response. On another subject, I would like to thank Shinfield South members, councillors Chris Johnson, Jim Fruin and Jackie Rance, as well as Shinfield Parish Council, for alerting me about the overcrowding issues on the 1532 Leopard bus service starting at Royal Berkshire Hospital in Reading. And I'd also like to thank Wokingham Borough Council Officer Rebecca Brooks and Reading Buses for their swift work in coming up with an interim solution to double up this service towards Shinfield until a longer-term solution can be found. At the last meeting of Council, we were presented with a petition related to the Floriette School. I was planning that evening of updating the Chamber about the plans for the road, but the meeting ran out of time, hence the update today. In accordance with the Department of Transport Circular 01/2013, setting local speed limits, the Borough Council evaluates the appropriate speed limit outside primary schools. As a new school, the Floriette has been assessed and a 20-mile-an-hour advisory speed limit signs with flashing lights are planned to be installed during late October 2022 and be operational after half term. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Moving on to item 68, statements from council-owned companies. Do I have any statements? Thank you. Councillor Clive Jones, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The non-executive directors of Loddon Homes and Berrybrook Homes recently attended an away day with councillor directors and executives of the companies. This was an opportunity for the boards to look towards the future with a higher degree of clarity than appears to have been shared with other executives and non-executive directors by the previous administration. Consideration will be given to merging the boards. It may well be that there can be reductions in operational costs and some efficiency savings. The Council of Directors made it clear that they were open to new ideas and innovation moving forward. We were able to confirm that we wanted to see an increase in the number of affordable homes in the borough. We were also certain that that would be the view of the whole Borough Council, not just the Liberal Democrat group. A non-executive director commented that this was the first meeting where all of the directors were on the same page. The non-executive directors and the Council of Directors. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I'd like to move on. Have a proposer? Thank you. Do you have a seconder? Thank you. Would you like to speak for 3 minutes? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This council currently does not have a leave policy for members who become parents while elected. To have one would bring us in line with other councils. It will also show residents that no matter your age, background, or circumstance, this council is supportive and welcoming of everyone who wants to represent residents. The average age for a council in the UK is 60 years old, and we want to remove any barriers to attracting younger members. Having a formal policy will be a step in the right direction to do just that. This motion should be something we can all get behind.
Does anybody wish to speak against this motion? Thank you. Then I can move straight to a vote. For those in favour of this motion, please raise your hands for. Against? Abstain? Thank you. Motion carried. Thank you. Oh, thank you. I'm now moving on to motion 490. Do I have a proposer? Rachel Bishop, Councillor, do you have a seconder? Dean Conway. Thank you. Would you like to speak?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. This is a motion which I really wish that I didn't have to bring to the council. But the current financial chaos makes it necessary for us as a council to send a clear message to our residents that we are here for them to help them through a crisis which for many will be worse than Brexit and COVID. Even before the latest financial turmoil, the cost of living was rising at its fastest rate in 40 years. Some forecasters say that inflation could exceed 18% in the coming months. Wages and benefits aren't keeping up. So if you're an unpaid carer, you're unable to work, or you're working in a vital but low paid role such as supermarket or care work, this will be hitting you very hard. If you're a young family struggling with the very high costs of housing and childcare in Wokingham, even a good income may now be stretched to breaking point. We are seeing increasing numbers of residents who have never needed to ask for help, who can no longer cope financially. This motion says to residents that we understand the hardship that they are facing and that we're committing as a council to give support to them a key priority during the current difficult months. Wokingham met the huge challenge of the pandemic by working together. Councillors from across the chamber, the officers and the voluntary and community sector. This motion is our commitment to continue to work together to meet this new crisis and to do all that we can to support our residents through it. I hope that all councillors across the chamber will be able to join in showing their support. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have anybody who wishes to speak against the motion? Okay, then I'll move straight to a vote. For those in favour, please show of hands for. Against? Abstain? Thank you. Motion carried. I'm very sorry. We've now run out of time and hopefully the next ones will be on the next agenda. Thank you very much this evening and I'll see you all soon. Thank you.